All politics is identity politics.
Welcome to Identity Politics, everyone. I'm Kevin DeAnna. You gotta love loving at a time when things are getting real. Let's get into it right now. Poll after poll after poll shows that the GOP is looking at a very tough situation in the midterms. President Donald Trump's approval rating is now at 34%, according to Pew. That's lower approval than Joe Biden had at this time during his administration. Adding to the problems, I think this is the 10th, 12th time he's talking about the Iran war supposedly over, but it is not, in fact, over. Iran is denying negotiations. We'll probably keep doing this on and off until the midterms. In fact, some reports indicating now that Iran is going to keep the war going until Trump leaves office because they don't think they can cut a deal with him, which means that you have to escalate, which means that you get an even more. And the biggest political impact of all of this is the economy, which is what the election is going to be fought over. And everything has demoralized a lot of people on the right. But really, I don't think it comes down to foreign policy so much as it comes down to money and gas prices. You give people what they want in the economy, or you at least give them the perception that you're punishing people that they don't like and you're going to give them their stuff. FDR was very good at this. You can pretty much do whatever you want. You don't deliver on that, you really can't do anything. That's the breaks, which means that the Democrats are radicalizing for them at the perfect time. This is a huge political opportunity for them. The DSA taking over all these races, yeah, that's a risk. Might cost them a race or two. But what is the point of trying to take over the government unless you're putting your guys in there? Like the people who are actually going to do something. The right could learn from that. And this is the year to do it if you're them. Why not go all out? The president's on the ropes. The GOP seemingly wants to lose. They're actively spiting their base. They're defying the president rather than passing popular legislation. And who's the person who has the most to gain from all of this? Somebody who I think could very well be the next Democrat presidential candidate. And I refer, of course, to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She is being remarkably open about running for president or maybe at least senator. Don't count it out. I remember as far back as March 2025, there were polls where Democrats were saying she was the elected official who best represented their values. And she's ruling out nothing. She said, I haven't ruled out the possibility, and I'm very humbled by the tremendous amount of support out there. But then she did the little modesty bit and said, but I think we have a responsibility to remain focused on the midterms and not on our individual aspirations. How selfless. And because it's 2026, we do not expect our politicians to give us a governing philosophy or even a program, a theory of history, speak multiple languages, reference classic literature, cite poetry like Robert Kennedy could. We certainly don't expect this from our Floyd politicians. Instead, we expect them to freeze their eggs on social media.
Don't be weird about this, even though I know all of you will be. Okay. That wasn't so bad.
She's 36, incidentally. A little late in the game for this. And from the looks of things, I think she needs GLP-1, not freezing eggs. But, look, you can crack whatever jokes you want. She matters. We don't. She's in Congress. She's in a safe seat. She probably could have Chuck Schumer's job. Chuck Schumer was basically the most powerful Democratic senator for who knows how long. She could absolutely beat him now. The demographics are totally different. She can hit him on the economic issues. She can paint him not entirely inaccurately as the senator from Wall Street, as well as Israel's leading champion among the Democrats besides Fetterman, which of course the base hates. She is, near as I can tell, the undisputed leader of what will become the dominant faction of the Democratic Party. She's got the rising demographics behind her. She's got the youth energy behind her, and she knows how to work social media. I do not count her out at all. I certainly don't count her out as a VP pick, which may be the real plan. And even like the freezing the eggs thing, this is a heroic act to millions of people. I mean, I'm taking action to protect my autonomy and someday I could do this, but now I'm working in this important cause. This stirs the heartstrings of the types of people who are social media addicts and who are neurotic and obsessive and psychologically damaged and therefore actually effective political activists because this is what they do. They'll campaign, they'll vote, they'll work for their candidate. Like these are the people you actually want, unfortunately. She is winning their hearts. Do not underestimate her. She knows what she's doing. She reflects the soul of a lot of people in this country with a little stunt like that, which may be the most anti-American thing I've ever said. Republican politicians want to be influencers, which is why they quit their jobs and join Rumble to sell pharmaceuticals. Democrat politicians understand that a politician is an influencer, and they use social media to accumulate political power and then get money from the taxpayers for their allies. Zurhan Mandami, Abdul Al-Said, AOC, and now political power broker Hassan Piker. I don't like it any more than you do, but this is reality. Now, one big reason they can do this, and they can do it so easily, is because the mainstream media, which is still a thing, which is watched by the people who vote, which is believed by the people who vote, which is to say older people, is going to launder their beliefs. It's going to excuse their extremism and radicalism. Very easy. And I know I've even said as much in the past. Well, look at what the DSA is doing. If we're on the right, why can't we just do the same thing? Well, this is one big reason why it's not quite that simple. If you're on the right, I know some of you guys can relate. This may cut a little deep for some of you. Maybe you joined a group in college, maybe you had a blog, maybe you got doxxed, maybe you had some social media controversy. It could have been 20 years ago. It never goes away. Like it's the mark of Cain, man. You're just set for life. And forget running for office. I mean, if you got a job as even some semi-prominent corporate official, you're the PR guy at a company making envelopes or something, a newspaper is going to freak out about it. They're going to dig it up. It's going to be a thing. They're going to flap their wrists and they're going to scream, and hysterical people are going to freak out on TikTok. And that's just the reality, even if you didn't say anything all that bad, so to speak. Now, how to deal with that is a separate question, but we do have to deal with it. That is the reality we're in. Democrats just don't. Why? Democracy is ruled by media. We don't have a state-run media. We have a media-run state. Journalists are a caste unto themselves. They think they have special rights. They think they get to determine who is allowed to speak and who is not allowed to speak, which is why they are constantly for far more speech restrictions against you on social media. They determine what news is important. They determine what gets buried. They determine the dominant narratives. They determine what you have to care about. And the fact is, even if we want to deny it, we're all caught up in it. Something becomes big in the media, you have to offer your stupid take on it, even though at some level, you know the news is all fake. But it doesn't change anything. You're still within it. In a media-dominated society, it's all a simulacrum. And what's on a screen is more real than what's actually real. And the greatest power they have is determining what's considered extreme and what is mainstream. I want to enforce the immigration laws already on the books. Well, that's racist and fascist. At the very least, they're going to call it controversial. But trans kids, illegal aliens voting, reparations for slavery, well, that's idealistic. It's healing. It's bringing a new feeling of hope. Doesn't matter what the polls say. Doesn't matter what actually wins elections. You know what kinds of policies are going to be painted as dark and repressive and what's going to be forward-looking and change and hopeful. That's why you want media control. Public opinion is mostly dictated, at least in the long run. But that doesn't mean it's always inevitable. Whatever happens in the midterms, whatever happens a few months from now, we are not in the grip of what many call peak woke. We have a bit more free speech. People aren't screaming for your kids to be taken away if you don't give them the COVID vaccine. Social media isn't filled with people crying and shrieking and screaming about Black Lives Matter. 2020 in retrospect feels like a kind of madness. I think every once in a while we all kind of think to ourselves, did that even happen? But they want you to feel that way. They want you to feel like it was just kind of a fever dream. I mean, look, the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation got about $90 million in 2020 alone, including donations from Amazon, Microsoft, Coca-Cola, Google, Airbnb. That last one's pretty funny because their whole business model is collapsing because blacks keep destroying the properties, but leave that aside. Between 8,000 and 8,700 people in the military were forced out for refusing the COVID shot. How many people, maybe even some of you watching this, maybe some of your family members, encountered all sorts of problems at work because you didn't want to take this thing? Or maybe you just said, all right, I got to keep my job. You shrug, you take it. Now you got to deal with heart problems and whatever else if you're a young man. How many people got caught up in some stupid social media controversy? You made a comment, you made a gesture that it wouldn't even need to be political, but the whole world just comes down on you. How many monuments came down? How many artistic products were censored? How many mainstream political figures were saying things like, we need to abolish the police? How many companies were requiring you to take DEI training and use pronouns and whatever else? And the reason it matters, not just because culture does matter. The culture war isn't fake. I mean, that's how power is shaped. But it's because when you implement things like this, you're giving money, resources, decision-making power to certain kinds of people. That's power. That's politics. That's what it's about. When a Fortune 500 company rolls out DEI training, for example, and pays whatever crazy lady some insane amount of money to berate everyone, that's a political act. That's a commissar being installed. We're so used to it, but we don't think about it in these sorts of terms. But that's what it is. I mean, imagine if you had some far-right government out of the media's imagination, and instead of a woman with blue hair, you had a guy with a trucker hat at Amazon. And if you didn't say Christ is king, they could get you fired. Like, it's insane to think of that kind of situation, but that would be the equivalent. But somehow what we have now, we just accept, well, this is the natural order of things. And so at work, in college especially, even in public, in whatever setting, even if someone's talking too loud, you just tolerate whatever left-wing insanity and you keep your mouth shut. And you keep your head down. You got to hide your power level, man. You don't want to lose your job, do you? You don't want the media after you. This is power. This is something you've all experienced. Wokeness is not just bad video games or something like that. It's not just, whoa, they're doing crazy stuff. No, it's programs, it's institutions, it's mandatory codes of behavior that flow inevitably from a certain worldview and set up new systems of power. I mean, what is wokeness? Let's start there. Because a lot of conservatives who make their living complaining about it can't seem to actually define it. I mean, in a sentence, if you put me on the spot, I'd say, look, it's the belief that all inequality results from oppressive social structures, which must be removed by any means necessary. And if you want to go into more detail, I think Scott Greer gives a good definition in White Pill. He says, quote, its central belief is that America is structurally and inherently oppressive, and that its central feature is a system of discriminatory racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, ableism, and an infinite litany of additional intersectional isms and phobias, preventing the full flourishing of oppressed peoples, which can only be remedied through a radical overturning of the social order. These forms of discrimination are held to be so deeply embedded in the country's institutions and cultural norms that even liberal ideas like fairness, colorblindness, or equality of opportunity are dismissed as rhetorical masks to perpetuate this oppressive regime. Therefore, white, heterosexual male Christians and the capitalist system from which they are said to benefit must be stripped of their power and resources in order to achieve justice, unquote. That's basically correct. And it's important to understand this because if you say things like, well, what about freedom of speech? What about equal treatment under the law? What about democracy? Conservatives say this kind of stuff like liberals are going to be, oh, you got us. No, you're not catching them in a contradiction. You're not proving them liars or something. The ideology explains it. If a system has institutional racism, which almost every academic or journalist or HR person and whoever else is going to tell you it does, then colorblindness, so-called, or respecting the Constitution or whatever else, that's just a cover for letting those with privilege keep their ill-gotten gains. Now, you can argue that this is destructive. You can argue that this leads inevitably to tyranny. You can even try to argue that's racist, but of course they'll say you can't be racist against white people. One thing you cannot argue is that it's illogical. If you accept the premise, this flows logically from it. If inequality comes from some privilege or oppression or some unfair system, how can you justify keeping that system in place? How can you not justify doing whatever it takes to tear it down? Unless, of course, you're willing to say that inequality comes from other places. And in fact, inequality is natural, inevitable, and often good. But I mean, let's be honest, that's just me, right? Like most people aren't going to say that. So you can laugh off the excesses of wokeness, never mind the lives destroyed, the increase in crime, the property destruction, the insane madness that gripped our entire society. And here the media helps because they can just laugh it off. Doesn't matter that these people were in power. Doesn't matter that they control institutions. Doesn't matter that these people were in government. They're just kids. They don't know any better. It's not a big deal. And of course, because so many people accept the premises, they will just go along with it. They'll say, well, they had good intentions. It just went a little too far. Geraldo Rivera, for example.
But they are shedding their radical defund the police and all that crap. They're running away from those statements they may have made in the past. I think Mondami, the mayor of New York, who got 1 million+ votes, is an example of that. They're not going to all of a sudden become commies. Their statements as kids were ridiculous, but that's not what they really are as grown-ups.
Like, oh, they were kids. They were kids. I mean, this is like a variation on like, you sick F, she was only 35 years old. Like, kids? This was not that long ago. Like, these people were in power. Like, it wasn't like some guy calling to defund the police or whatever else. It was people in Congress. It was people in media. It was people in academia. Like the youngest ones, I should say, were in like their 30s. I mean, come on. And isn't it funny how this never goes the other way? Oh, somebody said a racist joke when he was 18. You notice this kind of grace is never extended to them. You never see people in the media be like, well, we all make mistakes. No, they're not going to let you move away from that. If you say something you shouldn't, they take everything from you. They spike the football and then they move on. But holding people who actually have power, I mean, not like academic theories about white privilege or whatever else, but people who actually hold real power over you and me, holding them accountable for things they actually said, policies they actually advocated publicly, we can't do that. That's oppression. They were just kids. Why are you being a bully? So Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she's in Congress. She may well be the next president or vice president or senator from New York. She gets to do this silly little girl act and chortle along.
The abolish prisons, abolish police, which is also positions that have been taken by a lot of the progressive candidates who have won. Mm-hmm. How do you get around that?
Yeah.
I mean, those are not positions that are supported by
right.
most of
I mean, I think that a lot of these races, even right now, they'll have a tendency to be nationalized.
Yeah.
But these races ultimately are local, and all politics are local. My understanding is that that Francesca Hong has made clear her present stances to her electorate.
Yeah, she's moved away from a lot of that.
Right, she's moved away from it. And I have a local city councilman that has this saying, woke one was crazy.
Woke one was crazy. Okay, that's interesting.
And I think...
And that's ABC's Jonathan Karl giggling along there. Again, pretty great if they just help you like that. You and I will never know what it's like. I mean, holding power to account, right? The brave journalists. No, they're all pals. One of you guys runs for office and they find you wrote something in a college newspaper, you were in a group like Patriot Front or something, or even you knew a guy who they claim is far right. They're not going to help you laugh it off. They're not going to say, well, that was years ago. They're not going to help you moderate or something like that. So again, from the same interview.
Was it? I mean, did the movement go too far with some of those positions? I mean, you briefly supported the idea of defunding the police.
Well, you know, I think that during this time and especially during COVID, there was a huge opening of the Overton window. We were shut down. There was some of the highest unemployment rates that we have seen because of those shutdowns. Yeah. And I think that the doors were really open in trying to entertain any and every policy that was going to get us to a better place. And I actually think that the discussions that were had in that time were quite fruitful. I think that when we talk about crime today, it's fundamentally different than the way that we talked about crime in bringing crime down, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that we all share in the goals of having as low a crime rate as possible. I think that, you know, during lockdown, of course, rhetoric in that time is not rhetoric that we would use today. And I'm grateful that these candidates have the opportunity to present who they are to their electorate and what they're campaigning on in this moment.
Oh, well, the Overton window opened up. That makes it okay. Well, yeah, I got some ideas outside the Overton window, too. I got some ideas about how we can live in a better society. I can think of quite a few, in fact. But I don't think some reporter from ABC is going to giggle and nod along at some rhetorical excesses and go, well, you know, we were just having some fruitful conversations. And you know, we can't hold them accountable. That would be mean. But really, what they're seeing is this is what they actually believed when they thought they could get away with it. That's why they don't want you to bring it up. And actually, if you think about it, though, this is how they frame it. If you're bringing up what they said, if you're bringing up videos of people making all sorts of wild declarations from 2020, if you're the one saying, look, you were in power, you said these things, you had a platform, you should be held accountable. If you're the one saying that, really, when you think about it, you're the one engaging in cancel culture. I mean, I know we spent all that time in 2020 and before that losing our minds every time somebody said something politically incorrect. And I know all these people lost their social media accounts or their bank accounts or even their jobs. But look, that was years ago. And can we really say that we're all the same people that we were years ago? Really, the problem is cancel culture. And that's really coming from the right. When you think about it, you're the ones who have power. You're the ones who are being a bully. You're the ones who are being unfair. This is what they're going with. And it may work. This is the critical advantage they have over us. You can say unhinged stuff and someone's going to come along and explain it away. This is what they can do. But if you say something that's just a little bit unacceptable, they're going to put the worst possible spin on it, and they're never going to forget it for the rest of your life. Most people are not looking at the content of ideas. They're asking themselves, is it okay if I believe this? Is it okay if I say this? Is it socially acceptable for me to say this? And if someone who has status comes along, like a famous reporter or somebody on TV, and gives them permission, then yeah, it is. That's how it works. That's the reality. So consider what's going on right now with Hassan Piker and the DSA candidates, notably Abdul El Sayed in Michigan. Now, again, Hassan Piker, he's a power broker now. This is reality. Make fun of him all you want. He's going to have a caucus in Congress. His guys organize. His guys vote. His guys knock on doors. His guys are serious about taking state power. They do these things. They don't just make arguments all day about why we can't do anything and it'll never work. But I don't want to just defend him too much. One of the reasons he can do these things, and it's so much harder for us, is he's never really faced system opposition. He's never gotten online censorship, not really. He's never had to worry about losing his bank account, not being allowed to travel, having money just straight up stolen from you. Oh, you violated the terms of service. Sorry, it's all mine now. In terms of actual consequences, everything he said his entire life is very safe. The only consequences he'll ever face, and this isn't much, is people will quote things he said and ask people who are running for office that he supports about them. And they'll just kind of shrug and explain it away. That's the most opposition he's ever faced in his entire life. So, for example, Abdul El Sayed, when asked about Hassan Piker saying America deserved 9/11, which, to be fair, is probably a mainstream opinion among many of his voters, El Sayed said the following.
So again, I'm a lot more focused on who I'm campaigning to rather than who I might campaign with.
When asked about Hassan Piker's comments on 9/11, Senator Bernie Sanders called it a dumb statement. Do you agree? Do you disavow those comments that America deserved 9/11?
Of course it was a dumb statement. And of course, I think Hassan himself would say that was a dumb statement. He disavowed it. So yes, America didn't deserve 9/11. But, you know, to sit here and play gotcha politics with a dumb thing somebody said out of context that they disavowed themselves to say, oh, well, what does that mean about what you think? I want to be held accountable for what I say and what I do, rather than this idea that we're so stuck in cancel culture that all of us agreed was a bad idea back in 2020, but we seem to want to bring back.
Oh, it's just gotcha politics. Catch that? You're the one who wants to bring back cancel culture. We all agree 2020 cancel culture was a bad idea. We're all united in this. We all agree it was terrible. But these right-wingers, they want to bring it back. Isn't that terrible? We're all trying to find the guy who did this. It couldn't have been me. AOC said the same thing, basically. She said recently, much hay was made about the fact that we lost young men in the last election. Many of the same consultants that are wringing their hands today were the same ones talking about how we have to go on Joe Rogan and not be so willing to engage in cancel culture. You catch this? It's all your fault. You're the one pushing cancel culture. Does that mean we get online free speech back? Well, no, let's not be too hasty. I mean, free speech is fine. Like, I get free speech. But hate speech, that's what you guys want. You can't have that. I mean, let's give an example. Asmongold, for example. You all know him, and he's been getting better and better. But he recently just got suspended from Twitch. Why? Because he was talking about the situation in Ceuta, that exclave in North Africa owned by Spain, which is being besieged by Moroccans and all these Africans. And he pointed out that, at some point, if you're being invaded, you need to use force to stop it. This is common sense. Naturally, this gets him suspended from Twitch. I mean, this is cancel culture, right? This is what it is. This just happened. This isn't 2020. This is now. So what is the free speech crusader Hassan Piker's position?
It does say a lot about how bad things have gotten as far as like corporate culture in general, that this will probably be a slap on the wrist by Twitch. Because they're fucking terrified of disrupting or angering the right-wing masses that spend a good deal of time like doxing people that work for the trust and safety team at Twitch. It's like really fucked up. This would be a insta perma. Like there's no shot. I would say pre-Trump 2.0. Pre-Trump 2.0, this is a perma. Like Destiny got banned for less, which is crazy to say. Like he got permit for less, and he definitely deserved it. So I don't even know where we're at now, you know?
So that's the reason why I talk the way that I do.
I feel like this would be a ban on fucking YouTube as well, like, or at least a demonetization on YouTube as well.
It's crazy that it's not.
Yeah, guys. Everybody opposes free speech for the people they hate. Everyone supports cancel culture being used against their enemies. None of this has to be taken seriously. So throw principle right out the window, because the minute these people get the power again, all glory to the trust and safety team. Demonetize everyone, ban everyone I don't like. In contrast, there are other things you can say which are apparently perfectly fine.
We're going to keep bringing in immigrants in this country on purpose, just so they can fuck your sister, and then maybe even your daughter. We're going to destroy the white race, bitch. That's what we're here to do.
And again, I'm going to be overly fair. American Renaissance, it's an old stream, right? Not great quality. Oh, it's comedic hyperbole. Sure, fine. But try that excuse from our side, from the extremes on our side. Let me know how that works out for you on social media. Try finding a TRS song parody on YouTube these days, right? Like, good luck, guys. Now, obviously, there's going to be more of this because with Hassan Piker, there's so many things to say. So, for example, for decades now, every single time a Democrat runs for office, they would always use certain phrases. They would always say we're running for working families, middle-class families. You hear this all the time, right? Why? Because somebody took a poll, all the way back in the Clinton years, and they said, this is the phrase that you need to use to win swing voters. And the reason is because in America, everybody, whether you make $40,000 a year or $400,000 a year, says they are middle class. That's just how we are. And the kind of middling white people like that are generally the people you want if you want to win elections. But the thing is, if you're on the left these days, and again, left and right these days are determined by race, these are the people you hate the most. It's not the rich, really, because the rich are probably funding you. It's not the people who have nothing because you want those people to eat the rest of the country. It's the people who have just enough to have a stake in the country. Nationalism always was and always will be fundamentally a middle-class movement, because it's the people who can't just pull up stakes and go somewhere else. It's the people who still belong to their homeland. It's the people who actually have an interest in functional public institutions. They can't just pay to go somewhere else. It's people who have an interest in the protection of property. They don't have enough that their money can just be taken away and they can just shrug. Like the people who have a stake in the system and it working well. This is where the right traditionally gets its power from. You want to talk about the far right, so to speak. Who is the class that goes for it the most historically? Middle-class people who are afraid of falling into a lower economic class. People who are becoming downwardly mobile because of the way the political system is functioning. That's the far-right base. Who voted for Trump, right? What was the typical Trump voter in the Midwest? Type of guy who was probably a Democrat 20 years ago. But now these people are seeing everything taken away. And now, if you're in the DSA, even though in theory, according to class analysis, these are the people you should be championing, these are the people they hate. They hate these people. They aren't reliable clients. You can't just put them on welfare. You can't force a small business to donate to your stupid socialist cause the same way Coca-Cola or Amazon will donate to BLM. If you have a physical store, if you're some small shopkeep, you can't just shrug when there's crime or looting or something like that. You want the criminals put down. So, of course, you're a class enemy there, too. The way this whole system has worked for so long is there's this alliance between the very top, the people who are so rich that they don't really have a stake in the country. They just see it as an economic zone. And the lumpen proletariat who don't work, who are increasingly non-white, and are there just to be a political base for programs of wealth redistribution. They're there to destroy the white middle class. That has been the driving force behind the political system for decades now. Oh, you're being paranoid. I can actually hear my boss, Garrett Taylor, telling me this in my head. You're assigning motives to people. You're mind reading. This isn't what they actually think about the white middle class. Okay, again, don't believe me. Hassan Piker.
Mandami's aide, his top aide, Sia Weaver, said if you don't believe in the government's sacred right to seize property, it's over, and impoverish the white middle class.
Beast mode. I love her so much. One of the things about Zoran is that the people surrounding him oftentimes are so much cooler than he is. But that's also part of the reason why I really respect what he's doing.
I'm just some guy, man. Listen to them. They will tell you to your face what they want to do. Oh, I just want to give you health care. Okay, yeah, right. But don't worry. The GOP is going to start pushing back against these kind of racist attacks. Oh, wait, actually, Senate Republicans right now, they're going to the mat saying Hassan Piker is too anti-black. That's the attack line. Well, altogether now, Democrats are the real racists. To even say something is anti-white, Like the very idea that that's a thing, that's even a possibility, that's just beyond them. And I say this from experience. People like at the RNC or politicians or people in the conservative movement, just the very idea that something can even be anti-white, it's like they don't understand the sounds coming out of your mouth. It doesn't register with them. So if you think these people are going to fight on your behalf, you got another thing coming, at least the people in charge now. And look, I think we can dismiss a lot of what the DSA says as bad faith. Like, no, I don't think they actually want to help you. I think they actually want to hurt you. They're basically telling you this. But in theory, they are offering you things. These things may make things worse. They may not work. But what is the GOP offering you right now? Nothing. Just, well, these other guys are scary. Well, okay, but when young men have no prospects for, I mean, forget status. Just every generation took completely for granted, like a house, a job, the possibility of a family. Like these aren't like crazy things to expect. This is just gone. So a lot of people feel like none of these are possibilities anymore, so they're willing to try anything. So what do you expect? And this makes them easy prey. Consider Zohan Mandami in New York City. Again, is this just ethnic politics? Is it all just identity politics? Or am I being insane? Am I the one who's wrong? Identity politics is the thing. It's really about class. They want to help everyone and all this kind of stuff. Okay, again, don't believe me. Believe them. This is him a few years ago.
I think that with the interesting thing about our communities here is I think that minority communities, because we have never had representation, we are tied much more to identity. White communities, they've had representation forever. And so for them, their tie is a little less identity and a little more ideology. And so what I mean by that is we have a lot of voters here who think of themselves first as progressive voters. And so we reach out to them speaking about our platform, our progressive platform. And you're very right that you need someone in the middle to be a validator, someone to tell them to trust us, believe in us. We've had that with Tiffany Caban and Cynthia Nixon.
So there you go. And again, think of these white, naive goofballs who serve as the validators, his word. Forget Cynthia Nixon or whatever example he's giving. Really, that's not the people you have to worry about. It's ABC. It's the mainstream media. It's the people we started with. It's the establishment who tell you that when you see these foreigners mobilizing openly in the name of identity and race and religion, these guys come along in their suits on TV and say, actually, they're the same as you. We all want the same things. Actually, all that stuff when they took the mask off a few years ago, it's not a big deal. They were just kids. They don't actually mean it. They don't want to destroy you. They don't actually hate the country. They don't actually mean it when they say things like destroy the white race. They just want to give you health care. Yeah, they want to give you the kind of health care Canada gives depressed people. I mean, Woke One may have been crazy, but they didn't back off from it out of belief. They backed off from it because they had to. The New York Post has an editorial entitled, Woke One was crazy, but they still believe every bit of it. And they point out, quote, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Abdul Al-Sayed want you to forget all the lunatic stuff they and their buddies said a few years ago because, you see, Woke One was crazy. That's what the Bronze Bolshevik said on Sunday when she was asked about fellow DSA member Francisca Hong running for governor of Wisconsin. By the way, she's probably going to win the nomination today. Hong has a colorful, mostly deleted Twitter feed ranging from demands to cancel Thanksgiving to hating white people to eliminating the police. But AOC suggests we should overlook all these radical statements because they emerged from the turmoil of 2020 when everybody, supposedly, drank deep from the crazy pond. El Sayed, Michigan's Dem nominee for U.S. Senate, doesn't want to address any of the nutty things his endorser and pal Hassan Piker said, such as calling October 7th victim reports of sexual violence rape fantasies, praising 9/11 as America's just desserts, or calling for the streets to run red with landlord blood. By the way, Hassan Piker's mom is a landlord. The hard left keeps demanding that we ignore wacky stuff they said just 5 years ago. AOC can laugh all she likes at how crazy Woke One was, but the joke's on anyone who buys it, because when the opportunity strikes, Woke Two will be worse. This is true. And it's especially obnoxious for a lot of you guys who kept your heads in 2020. You didn't give in to the hysteria. And what happened? You were punished for it. And you don't get any credit for it now. You're simply told you need to forgive and forget. But here's the thing. Why does this opening exist? Why is peak woke gone for now? But why is it coming back? I mean, who is in power now? I mean, this is the critical thing. We're all kind of talking around. Yeah, Hassan Piker and El Said and AOC and whoever else, they're a bunch of anti-white freaks who hate you guys. But why is there a political opening for them? Is the GOP defending white people? Are they speaking to the concerns of ordinary white people, especially young people, especially young men? No. No. Not even close. What do you get? This kind of blackmail. We didn't do anything to earn your support. In fact, we kind of hate you, but not as much as these guys. So what choice do you have? And that's the message they're taking into the midterms. And it's not even wrong. What hasn't happened in this country is the development of a pro-white political force in American politics. Been trying for a decade. And the reason for that, more than anything else, is the censorship and repression that comes from what we call wokeness. That's why the GOP turns on its radicals rather than embracing them, like Nick Fuentes said the other day. That's why so many people who were building something in 2016 are gone now. That's why the right in so many ways has shifted to selling nonsense conspiracies or even just begging the left for acceptance. Or saying, like, I have an idea, let's give our enemies total power and then we get to win. They've given up because they can't give people the message directly. And to some extent, the left and the mainstream right both benefit from this situation. The left doesn't have to deal with a movement that might actually speak to the concerns of ordinary white people, that might actually defeat them. And the mainstream right can keep running on the platform of, well, we're not as crazy as these guys. So you have no choice but to vote for us. And the scam rolls on. Now, breaking that condition is our job. And I understand it's frustrating being on the right, but don't kid yourselves that the likes of Hassan Piker or his uncle or the DSA or anybody like that can ever be allies, even tactical allies. They have no interest in even letting you speak your mind, let alone building a movement, let alone speaking to the concerns of the white working class. They want to grind you out. They tell you this. Don't believe me, believe them. They're existential enemies. The mainstream right is just dumb. And to borrow a phrase, we can replace them. It will take time and effort, but I think it's happening. But don't kid yourselves that the left wants to see it happen. Wokeness is just in hibernation. It hasn't gone away. The mainstream media is trying to get you to let your guard down. But the minute they get power, it's all coming right back. And they will do their absolute best to make sure that we never get this opportunity again. Hey guys, quick reminder before we continue. You can follow Identity Politics on Rumble, Odyssey, YouTube, X, and TikTok. And if you want to make sure you never miss an episode, sign up for our email list. If you believe in this work and you want to help us stay fully independent, you can support us directly on Ko-Fi. We offer bronze, silver, gold, and white membership tiers, or you can give a one-time contribution, whatever works for you. Every bit of support helps fund production, research, and our ability to speak freely without corporate or platform pressure. All the links are in the description below. Now back to the show. My guest today goes by Nightmare Vision on X. You may know him as one of the hosts of the Night Owls podcast. He has an interesting niche on the right because it doesn't just navel gaze about the discourse, such as it is, but it gets into some of the policies that are happening both at the federal level and the states. Been trying to get him on for a while. Really happy he's joining us today. Nightmare Vision from Night Owls. Check it out. All right, NV, really glad to have you on here, man. I've been following your show for a very long time, and you've been with this thing for a long time, so I feel like we're coming at a lot of this stuff from the same place because we've seen a lot of it go down over the years.
Oh, you don't even know. We may have met. We actually may have
probably
met, Kevin. Yeah,
probably.
We may have met. Yeah, so we're two very old heads, but thank you for having me on. It's an honor to be on. I love the show. I love the streams.
Thank you.
I love you and Paul Kersey, by the way, when you guys get together and you do the show. It's so
another old head, yeah.
I learned so much about the history of American cities that I've never been to before. It's actually it's impressive. It's that in 80s movies. It's very impressive.
Yeah. I mean, more every time I'm on with Kersey, I learn more about like professional wrestling in the 1970s, and like you don't understand. There was a statue that was built in this place, and if we could just bring it back, like America would be great. It's like
Point Break.
Yeah, yeah, right. It'll be a connection between some 80s movie and like a statue that used to be in front of the Capitol with like a white guy holding a black guy's severed head. And it's like, we can just restore this. America will be saved. That's view from the right.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I'm not saying he's wrong. I don't disagree with him on any of this stuff.
But I'm really happy to be here.
We're in a pretty weird place because in a lot of ways, it feels like we're in this stuck political era for a long time because there was the before time, the long, long ago, before Trump and everything else. And we all remember how bad the GOP was, how bad the conservative movement was at this point. I think that's where guys like Scott Greer are kind of reacting against because people, especially younger guys, don't realize like how unbelievably stupid it really was.
Yeah.
And then you get to where we are now. And I think of people like my older son, like Trump is all he's ever known, like just kind of dominating the political scene. And so the temptation is to be like, well, look, we've kind of gotten all we're going to get out of this. And now it seems to be, I mean, let's face it, it's not in a great place right now. His approval rating is like 34%. You've got the one thing that I think everybody was like, just don't do this, just don't do this. And then he went and did it, which was the Iran war. And that's kind of dragging on and having a big problem on the economy and everything else.
Yeah,
and
we
then
even
you've
let him
got
kidnap
this,
Maduro. We like
yeah, right.
Kind of
well,
fun.
I thought that was good, actually. I mean, I'm kind of like a total imperialist when it comes to the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah. That makes sense.
That's totally, but that's a different thing.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is the affordability crisis, which is, I mean, they talked about it in 2024. I mean, I think the economic issues were actually way more important than people think in getting Trump elected. I can't tell you how many guys I was working with in the trades who really got pumped up by the idea of no taxes on overtime. But now, let's face it, inflation is getting worse. And we all kind of know why, and you can blame it on Biden and whatever else. But like voters are what they are, right? And if you don't put money in their pocket, they're going to freak out. So the question becomes this: are people right to just be like done with this? Done with voting, with the system, with putting their faith in a politician? Because a lot of people are saying, look, we gave it an honest try, and this is where we ended up. What's the point?
Yeah. Are you asking me that? I mean,
that's kind of where I'm going.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's I'm touched. But I mean, my answer to that is like a very, very strong no. But it's not. I have to be careful here because I'm not going to project anything onto you, Kev, because I like you're like
you can project whatever you want.
But like you know what I mean? Like the Twitter discourse, I'm going to come up with an imaginary guy in my head to hate. All right, I'm going to use him because we can all think of anyone who says whatever you come up with. Oh, there actually are people that say those things. So my point is I'm trying to justify all the caveats here is that I don't really disagree with anything that you said in terms of like what's bad. Like I do jokingly kind of say that I kind of want Trump to just nuke Iran, but no, I don't actually want. No, I'm anti-war. I'm anti-intervention. It's just that I kind of sometimes I feel like if you can't make a deal with Trump, I like hate you because I just feel like this guy is like, he doesn't actually like, remember in the first admin when he went over to hang out with like Kim Jong-un, he's like, you're fat, ugly. And then they're like at the DMZ and they're like, it was best very friends. Funny. It was very iconic. Yeah. So I kind of do feel like that a little bit. But yeah, I don't really support the Iran war at all. The affordability stuff is real. Yeah, like, housing is not getting better, healthcare costs, all that stuff. So I don't really disagree with you on any of that stuff. And so my point is, you didn't say that I did, but I'm impugning other people just preemptively because I feel like the kind of the way the discourse goes is that, oh, if you don't write off voting, or if you're not saying that we should write off the system or voting or Trump or MAGA or all this stuff, that must be because you like all of these things. You know what I mean? Like it must be because you're actively supporting these things. So my biggest thesis, I'm kind of here to speak for, I guess we could talk about the Mystery Grove article. I could talk for Mystery Grove. He gave me permission. I'm going to be way less violent than him. I'm going to be much more ecumenical. He is out of ecumenical. He has no ecumenism left inside of him. So I'll do it on his behalf. But I feel like the broadest point I can make here is not actually like a, how do I put it? Like a normative judgment. It's like a descriptive judgment at this point. And I think this is kind of been true for a while, but I think it's definitely true after the 2024 election. I think people I remember the vibe. I feel like people kind of knew something was different, but I'm not sure everyone really understood exactly what was different. And I feel like that still kind of goes today. There's like kind of a sense that people don't really know exactly how we should be thinking about this stuff. But my broadest thesis that I didn't really come here to actively defend, but I just think it's part of the discussion. And so I'll just throw it out there is that after the 2024 election, I actually don't think there is any scenario where the right, the American right, whatever you want to call it, the European, the far right, it wins with Trump losing. Like, I just don't think
that's a pretty big claim. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that at this point, our fates are tied. I think it kind of has been true for a while, but I think that after 2024, that election really was different. And I think a lot of people just kind of missed the boat on this for a lot of reasons. Maybe we can get into it. And I'm not even saying that like the things that you brought up, they're not like insubstantial. But I think the other reasons have to do with maybe the media environment and the landscape, maybe new people coming in to the side. Like a lot of, I'm sure you noticed this as us elder ancient heads.
There is something to that.
A lot of post-COVID,
there is something to that
influx and stuff like that. But that is the broad thesis. And I guess I'm assuming it's controversial maybe to your audience. I'm one of your audience, not controversial to me. So you have one person who agrees with your guess. But like, yeah, just that they're really, and I think that also is part of the main thrust of the mystery grow piece that he just wrote, why he's against the concept of always chimping. Basically all of his pieces for the past like 2 years, every 6 months, he's like, hey, everyone, you all deserve to die. Here's my Substack piece. And I think that is kind of what's the bedrock of like his approach, which I will say I agree with. And so it's not necessarily like when you talk about, let's say, Trump's approval rating being low, which is like, that's fine. I mean, it's like, I'm not disputing it, in other words, or the Iran war being like a misguided policy. It's like, yeah, I kind of agree with all of that stuff. But at a normative kind of level, my response is like, yeah, I hope that doesn't hurt our electoral chances. Like, I don't want us to lose the midterms. That might happen. We might lose the House or something like that. But the point is that I don't, it's like, I'm sorry to do this.
Not like morally outraged by it.
It's like the Seinfeld episode. I'm sorry. It's like George convinces Jerry to buy a stock on like an insider trading tip. He buys a stock. Then throughout the whole episode, Kramer comes in the apartment with the newspaper because the stock is like tanking. And Kramer has that goofy grin, that really stupid grin on his face every time he walks in the apartment. Why? Because the stock is like tanking, and he knows that he's going to be delivering the news to Jerry. And there's this one point in the episode where Jerry just looks at Kramer like, why are you smiling? Why are you always smiling? He just points out like, why are you taking glee in my loss or anything like that? So my concern for all this stuff, like, do I object to it on independent grounds? Like something like Iran, like as like a mostly anti-interventionist, it's like, yeah, I don't think it's as, obviously I don't think it's as bad as like the war on terror or anything like that. And I'm thankful.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's a totally different.
Yeah. And I'm thankful. Like, look, obviously loss of life is like catastrophic, that's always like really bad, but I'm thankful that it's not anywhere near the way it was when we were kind of younger in our heyday of the Bush years or whatever. But yeah, like, I don't think that there's this, I think that people kind of end up getting like kind of, how would I put it? Like, not addicted, but they get psychologically invested in this stuff going wrong because it's not just that it's like, if it goes wrong, I don't know. It'll afford us some sort of opportunity. And that's where I get like kind of crazy oppositional, where I'm like, no, actually, maybe we could lose this whole thing. Maybe the second Trump admin could go down in flames in some sense or whatever. But that just means we do too. Like, I don't actually see any scenario anymore where like I said, Trump falters or fails or whatever, but the right in America somehow wins from that. I just don't really see a workable scenario where something like that happens.
It's a big case. I mean, there's a lot to get into with that, but this is kind of a moot point because, obviously it's too late now, so it doesn't matter. But in a way, what you're saying sort of, there were the people before the election who were saying, look, we need to separate ourselves from Trump because if he goes down, he's going to take the whole right with him. I mean, to some extent now we're not locked, we're locked in there with him. And so like the idea was that if you could have an independent right, a right independent of Trump, then we wouldn't be in this situation. I guess the fundamental thing, and I think this is where you and I probably, because we're old and cynical, probably agree, is like, can you actually have an independent right that's politically relevant? Like around who? You know what I mean? I mean, even if someone were to be like, oh,
I'm sorry.
What's that?
I said, how mean do you want me to get? Because I didn't mean to interrupt you though. Keep going. Sorry.
Well, I mean, even if you brought up something like, 'cause people will be like, oh, third party and all this kind of stuff. It's like, look, I mean, what, Elon Musk's America Party, like what we're going to have, Tucker Carlson's going to run or something. And it's like, they're not, it's not going to get a hearing from the left because again, the left knows it's the left, right? Like they're not going to compromise on like immigration or something. So even if like in theory, it was an independent thing, in practice, there's not like a mass base that's separate from the Trump base.
Yeah. So, and notice, this is not something
in
that we
theory, I want an right. Yeah. I mean, I want in a way, like in my heart of hearts, and I think everybody knows this, like I am like the most stereotypical Wignat 1.0 WN of all time. I mean, that's what I am. But I'm also old and cynical. And so like, you know, if that was going to be like a mass thing, if it was going to be a politically relevant movement, it would have happened by now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, this is what I mean when I said like, how mean do you want me to get? Because a lot of this, I'm
the diplomat here.
I don't want to do I don't want to do the landing knowledge. I got to do the land acknowledgement stuff. But like, I am also an old head, just like you. We have been running in similar circles for quite some time. So like, we've been reading the same blogs and maybe even writing for them for like
a very 20 different names. Nobody knows who anybody is. So like, I don't even know who I am anymore. Like
exactly, Mr. Hood. No, but like, you know, my point is like, I kind of want to be mean about this point in particular, but I just don't want it to feel like I'm like an outsider, like I'm some sort of like
I know what you're saying.
Jewish neocon laughing at. It's like, no, I'm like one of those. I'm in the club and I'm like, hey, yeah, what would that look like? Like the way you articulated it. Like, yeah, by the way, everyone forgot about Elon Musk's America Party. I haven't seen anyone discuss it. But how ridiculous. That was so, remember when people found out like an Indian guy was like the name on like the LLC?
Well, it was going to be a third party, and like the issue that was really going to capture the dispossessed American voter was we need more H-1B visas. Like this is what they're going to go with.
Yeah, and Tucker, I don't know if he's actually. I feel like he's going to pussy out, but he released like that platform that was so innocuous. It felt very.
It was so vague. Like it wasn't like.
It was very Constitution Party. It was very Chuck Baldwin. I like Chuck Baldwin.
I voted for Chuck Baldwin.
Yeah, it was very 2008, Constitution Party. It wasn't even actually.
I voted Chuck Baldwin. I voted Chuck Baldwin in 2008, and I voted Virgil Good in 2012.
I still hold on. We're allowed to do this, right? Because we're old. This lore moment. I still have a physical copy. I have a physical copy of AmCon from 2008 with like all the people. Like, I think Rod Dreher's in there too, like Sailor, everyone saying like who they're going to vote for. I posted it once and a bunch of left-wing guys that hate Rod Dreher, they actually call him like a neo-Nazi. They were like, look at this. Very interesting, because like Sailor was in there too. And I was like,
right.
Oh, I didn't know that was like, I didn't know no one knew that. That like, yeah, Dreher was right. But it was about who they were voting for in 2008. And I feel like Baldwin's name was like all, it was all over there. But it's like, yeah, like how, I don't know, how much longer do we have to watch the far right, before you kind of call it? So in terms of like real world political.
Well, there's a different thing, right? I mean, because this is sort of the thing. And again, I'm not trying to be like snarky, whatever here. Like if in terms of something like Patriot Front doing like the march on July 4th, I'm like 100% on board with that. It's like, yeah, it's a thing in terms of what they're doing throughout the country and other groups too, because there's really like two strategies here, and they're not mutually incompatible. And I support them both wholeheartedly. I mean, one, of course, is basically the stereotypical like, oh, yeah, you infiltrate the GOP, win office, and all this kind of stuff. But of course, there are certain things you have to do if you're serious about winning. Like, you're not going to win a Republican primary by being like, Trump is actually a foreign spy. Like, it's just not going to work. But then the other thing that you can do is you can build these kind of like parallel structures, these business networks. You can buy land. You can start building power in certain areas. And then eventually that might translate into political power on a local level. This is basically what Jared Taylor is saying. I mean, he's more or less thrown in the towel as far as the idea of we're going to vote our way into national power and then do certain things. I mean, in a way, I guess I'm more reactionary and conservative than he is when it comes to that. It's just, I don't think that there's necessarily a contradiction between being a vanguard or being involved in system politics, but you got to do one or the other. What you can't do is just kind of like sit back and be like, well, I'll give you a lot of complicated reasons about why it's not possible for us to win, because if that's true, then why not just take up gambling or something? Why not just play Pokemon? I mean, whatever the hell you're going to do, like, you're just going to be happier for it, like, why talk about politics at all?
Yeah. And I think, I mean, one of the arguments, I mean, I know you're not trying to bring this up specifically, but I think part of at least with the Twitter ecosystem, like post Elon or whatever, I think actually the notion of the vanguard, like, I think it almost like just depends who you're talking about at this point. Like, you're talking about like someone like Jared Taylor who's been around for a long time, and he like obviously has put a ton of, well, I don't know, actually, maybe it's just his natural disposition from his like background. But I want to say it's like he put a ton of thought into his presentation, how he speaks, what points he wants to bring up. You know what I mean? Versus the current Twitter environment, which is like much more like just retarded and like
it's money too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the big thing is that, I mean, one of the big, this is probably a little different than what a lot of people expect, but I think one of the biggest reasons that we're in the situation we're in is because we still cling to this belief in limited government or something. And it's not because I think limited government is bad from a policy level, but from a political organization level, nobody has a stake in actually winning state power. So it's always just a market because, you know, the DSA, if they don't win state power, they starve to death. That's where their money comes from. That's where their jobs come from. That's where their influence comes from. They get it from foundations or whatever else. And you need the state to kind of back that up. For us, it's just a market. And so there's no downside to losing. In a way, it's actually better. And this isn't even like, oh, it's, you know, fringe right Twitter or something. I mean, I was working in the conservative movement among like the most milquetoast type guys possible. And it was the same dynamic. I would hear my bosses openly brag about how much more money we got when Obama got reelected because everybody freaks out and they send in money to Conservatism Inc. And it's like, well, yeah, but if you actually believe that and your personal interests are tied up with losing, and this is like normie Republicans, normal conservatives, why would you ever even try to win?
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with that. It's just the conclusion. One of the conclusions I've drawn from this over the past year or two is actually, and I kind of commented from your perspective a little bit, like my own disposition is actually not very political, to be honest. Like as a poster or as someone who is interested in the far right, it was always more, you know, I had my own like kind of academic kind of hobby, like we all do, you know what I mean? But I actually think that one of the conclusions of this criticism, especially that you're making, is that actually the right is not political enough. The right actually has like failed to be political because, and again, it's the failure is not, I'm not trying to say that it's like totally on us, but like, you know, obviously for years we were all just about metapolitics. Everything was metapolitics, man. And part of it was because like, you know, no one listens to us. So let's just be like the most interesting people we can be. And then it kind of like, it slowly shifted over time where it's like, oh, like the fact that you've drawn, you know, kind of eccentric figures, but really smart people that are willing to kind of sacrifice, like, you know, some of the older guys, like their entire personal lives in order to make these points or to bring up these issues that, you know, it was uncomfortable, but they weren't just doing it to like be transgressive, to be honest. They were doing it because like, yeah, actually these like bad politics, these bad beliefs have like, we've reorganized our entire society based on them. Like, you know, racial equality and black right, all this stuff. Like we have done all of these horrible, horrible things based on these beliefs. And then in the 2010s, obviously it exploded with like Black Lives Matter and stuff. And so you had more people that were like, you know, like actually that kind of meta political shift is like kind of effective because, you know, Twitter is not a political constituency. So you're not really talking to voters. You're talking to other people thinking about issues, right? And so you're teaching people how to think differently about things on a smaller scale, but that's how it always is when you're changing people's thoughts. You're not, you know, in other words, you're not getting people's votes. But I think that over time, and I'm not saying that stuff's not important. I can't ever give it up.
We still do it. Yeah,
I can't ever give it up.
What is this?
But at the same time,
I don't know how to do anything else.
Actually, that's true. I was trying to be nice to myself. Like, well, I love it so much.
No, I just want to cut through it. Let's be honest and self-aware about what we are. I mean, no illusions here.
No, yeah, it's true. I just want to read and then just die quietly in an unmarked grave. That's like basically, that's true. But like, actually, I have now, and again, it's after Trump's victory in 2024, especially, I have like forced myself to almost like learn politics where like I can kind of like almost like drop my radicalism like the Batman cowl at whenever I have to. It's like, am I dealing with something in the real world that's like, you know, like for instance, I'm looking at like the Michigan race, the guy that's running on the Democrat side who just won the primary, that guy Abdul El Sayed, right? So his opponent is Mike Rogers. I don't know if he's like a super rhino guy, but he's like, I think just like a lot of guys where he's like this, he's like this solid Republican dad. He just wants, you know, he looks like he should like be playing catch with his kid out the. He just like knows like, oh, I got to be a MAGA shill now. Like Trump runs everything, so I'm going to do that too. And you're like, oh, that's good. You're smart. You're like learning the way. And so when I look at something like that, I'm not dreaming of like a, you know, like a 1920s European autocrat coming to power in like the Michigan Senate. I'm like, this guy should win because he like toes the line, and the line now is profoundly anti-immigration. And the other guy is like literally a foreigner who like shouldn't be in this country. And I want him denaturalized and gone. So it's like, I've like taught myself almost in a way. And I think that a lot of people would benefit. And it's hard because again, I'm sure that a lot of people listening feel like I'm trying to like entice you to like sacrifice the deepest core of like who you are. But it's like, no, actually right-wing people just don't like politics. And I get like, we don't like politics. That's like why we like revolution. And it's why we like political theology, because we kind of do impute like religious apocalypse to policy. That's like where accelerationism came from. And I get like, I feel like a lot of people have like kind of turned against it. Now they kind of realize the weaknesses of it. But why was it initially attractive? Because we're very kind of transcendent minded people on the far right. And we just imagine if it gets so bad, actually, yeah, like a God will descend from the sky.
Heidegger was right. Yeah, Heidegger meant it as like a warning, but we actually mean it as like a prophecy. Like only a God can save us, and he's coming any day now.
And it's like,
which is why I'm going to go pray to my Evelyn shrine.
Yeah, and he has to come, and he has to come at the right moment. And like, what's the better moment than like the very moment that you've decided that like all is lost and it's completely over? Like, what a great twist. You know, it's just like, this is the romantic view. And it's, again, I do still love that. I do still believe that forever, low key. But like, that I kind of do want to push against that a little bit, because it has made people kind of actually avoid politics. It sounds so strange to say that, because it's like, no, you're on Twitter all day. You're talking about politics.
Yeah, but it's not politics. It's entertainment.
Yes.
I mean, that's kind of where it's at.
Yeah. And it's not politics in the sense that it's like, okay, these are like what my beliefs are, which is kind of something I wanted to touch on too, but maybe later. But it's like, these are what my beliefs are. Okay. These are the chances of them being realistically manifested in the world now. Okay. That's like, fine. I'm not even telling people to give up on that. You just have to have like the separate mode of analysis where now you're like looking at the real world and you're like, just percentage wise, who's the closest? Like, who's the closest to this? And then you kind of look at the political landscape according to that metric and make judgments on it. And there's nothing really like, I don't know how would people call like selling out, or there's nothing real. I don't actually view that as like compromising. That's just like the real world. Like, you know, we're all born in this current historical context. This is how power works in America. These are the parties that we're given. And again, like you and I come from a place where, yeah, we were all like done with the bipartisan system, right? We were like, yeah, the two parties are useless. And, you know, we were there for Ron Paul, good old Ron Paul. We were like, yeah, this is like kind of cool. And then we're like, oh, but then that didn't work. And we're like, okay, then it needs to be something so radical, so outside of our current expectations. And I actually think in a way, Trump kind of, he was that. He does operate that way because he kind of was out of left field, but it wasn't kind of just transparently or overtly outside of the bipartisan system. And so I think that now he's created this context where there's this fight that's going on that I feel that the stakes are extremely high. And I feel like a lot of people who also think the stakes are very high are using that as an excuse to like depoliticize in the way I'm saying it, like check out, like you're saying. Right. And I think that like, no, that's like the opposite lesson people should be drawing. Like you should be like more political, because there's like two reasons. I'll just state them really quickly. There's two reasons why I think people should be doing that. One is because even the GOP, but especially the conservative movement in America, Trump has really transformed things for the better, just in like so many ways. I like the progress that we've made on like immigration policy and the conversation on the right on all these issues is just like you were saying at the outset, it's just like unthinkable compared to the way it was 10, 15 years ago. And so I'm not going to say I'm offended, but I don't like when people either lie about it online or they discount it, because I'm like, what's the purpose? That's when I kind of morph into Mystery Grove myself. I'm like, what's the purpose of this? Like, why are you downplaying good things that we've all been begging to like for someone to start like pandering to us or implementing them? Like, I have no motivation to do that at all. But then the other point that I think makes it worse is that it's not just depoliticizing on the right, you know, staying home, not voting, whatever, however it manifests. But it's also the fact that the left itself is now undergoing like a deep radicalization process. So it's not just that, it's not just what I feel is like misleading. I'll try to put it in a less mean way, like misleading people about the current state of the right or what the admin's actually doing on a lot of these fronts. But it's also, you're doing that at a time when the left is kind of like teaching itself to bray
they're learning
and like bare its fangs and sharpen its claws. And I feel like
we're not dealing with Hillary Clinton anymore.
No. And like, it is, it is interesting that, there is kind of, there are other elements to it. The fact that they're kind of like apologizing for being woke. They're like lying about how woke one was crazy and all this type of shit. But like, we all know what's happening. It is kind of the old alt-right analysis, just straight up. It's demographic shift. And yeah, like obviously white leftists are like a part of that at the top or whatever. Jewish leftist activists and stuff, they're all a part of that at the top. But we know what's going on. They're just like straight up running foreigners in these elections. And they're not, they're not white. They're not American. They obviously hate the country. Like this isn't even controversial. It's not like a 20 years ago, you're like, I think John Kerry might not love America. It's like this guy, this guy's an Egyptian, this guy's Ugandan. Like they fucking hate the country. Like they're just, they're anti-white, they're anti-American, anti-Western and all that stuff. And so I feel like in other words, it makes it almost doubly irresponsible because it's like, man,
the stakes are real here. I mean, it's like when I was reading about the fall of South Africa in the 1990s, I was really struck by, because there were, all right, here's the thing, because this is the delicate game here. Because there are elements of both. Because South Africa is sort of like the ultimate nightmare scenario, right? Like things go on the current timeline and it just doesn't get better, then that's where we are.
Yeah.
If you look at how people were responding at the time, it's not like people didn't know. But you had this situation where the conservatives would basically say like, well, we need to keep the system going. We need to, like, we can't break away and have our own state, because there was this whole plan to have like a Volksstaat and everything else. Like the military was going to get involved to do all the stuff. And they were like, well, that's too much. We don't want to sacrifice territory. We don't want to scare people. We need to go along with this sort of thing. And so they kind of sleptwalked themselves into oblivion. But then when you look at the hard right, shall we call it that, like the AWB and groups like that, and some of the splinter groups that came out of it, even they were like, well, we can't do this because we have to talk about this other issue, which is actually kind of marginal. And then when they would do even like violent things, it was always this kind of like nihilist type element. Like we're just going to throw everything into chaos and then something maybe eventually will happen. And it was almost like both sides failed. And then that's how you kind of ended up where it is today. And the only like real tangible result that was like productive from the whole thing was basically Irania, which was one of the things that they got out of the constitutional settlement, where you have like, we have this at least. And what I'm afraid of is that you sort of have the same thing happening now where, I mean, one, how many people, you can't read somebody else's mind, right? I mean, Jared's always yelling at me about this because I'm always imputing the worst possible motives to people, although I'm usually right, frankly. But he's, if there are people online preaching whatever, I'm like, well, look, they're trying to make money or whatever, but let's assume some of them like actually mean it, right? I mean, there is a problem in the sense that like, what can it lead to? What is the point of this, as you said?
Yeah.
But then when you look at the people who are, because what you're advocating is like, well, we're going to try to get like the best kind of political outcome within what's possible. I mean, that's the old William F. Buckley rule. I don't mean that to be like an insult. I know that's fighting words to those of us. Yeah, I know, right? But the Buckley rule
I've become dark neocon. What is it?
Dark woke?
Dark
Buckley.
Dark neocon. Yeah.
Dark Buckley. But I mean, the Buckley rule was basically you vote for the most conservative guy who can win. But at the same time, I mean, if you look at, even the conservative movement, whatever its failures and everything else, they in their own mind got what they wanted when they got Reagan elected and everything else. So, when you look at the situation in South Africa, you had a radical vanguard, you had these people, and they were organized. They were better organized than just about anything that exists today. They had power at certain levels, but it all just kind of turned into this nihilistic violence, almost for violence sake, and ideological plans that didn't really relate to the majority of the people. And that's like, okay, well then just go through the existing political system. It's like, yeah, but that's screwed up too, because they spent the whole time being like, well, the Constitution, and we need to defend private property rights, and we need to do all this kind of stuff. And of course they ended up just giving the whole country away. And then in the name of conservatives, it was conservatism that gave South Africa away. And so my fear is that we have this desperate situation where if we go along with the system, like the system is leading us to total destruction on a long enough timeline. Like it's hard to, like the demographic situation, to take this obvious example, has not improved in 10 years. It has in fact gotten worse. That's just objectively true. You could argue there's been progress and we're doing these things in policy and everything else, and the conservative movement rank and file has changed, I think. I think that's all true. But, are we in a better position now? There's a good case to be made that no, we are in fact not. But on the other hand, it's like, what is to be done? Because then, and you remember what it's like, and I think I'm guilty of this, and probably you were too. I mean, you remember the kind of things that we were saying back in 2008, 2009, 2012. I mean, there are all these kind of like desperate solutions coming from a place of, let's face it, total perceived impotence, where you're just like screaming into the void, and your solution is like, well, we're going to, I don't know, move to the Northwest or something. I mean, like, this is the plan. And yeah, maybe there's a way in which that would work. But I mean, you only advocate these things because there doesn't seem to be any realistic path forward.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you have the return to land guys out now. There's
I mean, I do support that because I consider that like a parallel structure type thing. But it's like, I don't think any of them expect it. Well, it's also like you gotta do what you gotta do in terms of like how you're gonna make a living. I mean, I do that to the group I'm in now. I do that a lot of people do that. Anyone who I think in Patriot Front or any of these other groups does that kind of thing where it's like, this is my crew, this is my network, this is how I survive. But I don't think anybody in any of these sorts of things thinks like, and that's how we're gonna take over the country within 5 years. Yeah. Which is a big difference.
No, it's true. But this kind of does get back to the point about how like, I say we as like, people who've been on the fringes of the right now. Now it's, much more mainstream, a lot of our positions, but the right for a very long time is that we just we don't think politically. I feel like even in the South Africa story, I don't really know all the details of it, but it's very interesting, even the way you describe it, because I feel like this is totally absent from even the current conversation here now, where you talk about even like what the responsibilities of the vanguard are. Like, I actually feel like that's totally absent from the current conversation, because even now, when it comes to like inter-right-wing kind of drama, fighting and stuff like that, it is really mostly people either, they either believe Trump's undermining himself, or they have some sort of like, maybe entertainment or the media benefit from undermining him or something like that. But then also it's like, I almost feel like the way you would know that it got serious is when people would do things like stop threatening to vote for Democrats, for instance, because that would be like, oh, if you keep threatening to vote for Democrats, say, which I see people do time to time, it's like, you're not actually like, you're still just reinforcing the bipartisan binary too. You're just saying that like,
that's a good point.
You're so wrapped up in the politics of spite now that the guys that are closest to you in real world terms, you just want to let everyone know that you actually are so dissatisfied with them that you're going to go with people that like hate you and agree with you zero, like negative.
Yeah, and it's not if it's not a radical alternative, because it's a fair argument if someone's like, well, you believe all this esoteric stuff and your great takeaway is to vote Republican. That's not very radical. Yeah. It's like, yeah, but then again, neither is voting for Democrats.
No, I'm the first guy now. You got to have Moldovan on, man. You got to talk to somebody. He's the most, my partner for Night Owls is the most deflating. He's one of the funniest. And that's his, he's just as old head as we have been. And like, I think he would even still vote for Kemi Badenoch in England, just because, like, no, the conservatives.
I'm sure I could go that far.
I even tell him that. I'm like, I'm not. But like, yeah, I feel like that would be like almost like a good metric in this hypothetical where it's like, okay, like, what if you had a vanguard that had like actual responsibility, that view themselves as like pushing? I feel like Sellner talks about this a lot. I feel like he tries to develop almost like a theory of what. Like, I think he calls it like the
His
flanks.
book has this. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's one of the very few. Sellner's book is quite good. I think Passage put it out, but
oh yeah, remigration.
I'm going to have him on. Yeah. I'm going to have him talk about it. But one of the things that, just to give a quick practical example, is he was talking about the ICE protests here in the United States. And he brought up the point, like, why isn't there like sort of a civilian support network for ICE where the Americans like supporting them in the streets, where are the counter protesters? Now we can all come up with lots of reasons why. Yeah, it's not, you can't just snap your fingers and like have an infrastructure spring up. And of course there are legal questions and Antifa threats and all the rest of it. But like, that doesn't change the fact that he's right. This is at some level, like, you do kind of have to have these things. And there's a dynamic that takes place. And I think I still am old fashioned enough that I believe in just no enemies to the right, no matter what. Yeah. And there's a dynamic where you have people who are pushing the agenda, and then you have people who are trying to work through the system, and they both kind of need the other. And it can be a very delicate thing. The DSA is kind of navigating this right now with how they deal with Hassan Piker and people like that. But the fact that they've been able to get where they've been able to get to shows that they understand this, and the right does not. I feel like the right did understand it in 2016, where you actually had call it the alt-right and the alt-light, more or less working in tandem for quite a while until it all just kind of blew up in everybody's face, deliberately, by the way. And I still feel like we have to get back to that, but the problem is that there's so many of the fights that are taking place now, they're not even, as you say, political fights. It's mostly like a fight over market share. It's a fight over who can be better at selling pharmaceutical ads on Rumble.
Or it's very deep.
My endorsement deal is coming soon, by the way. I'm going to have the little helmet with the red hair that makes your hair grow back.
Rainforest.
Yeah, the red light. That's what I was thinking of. Yeah, right. Or that too. Yeah.
Yeah. You gotta save the Norwoods. You gotta represent them. No, but it's a good point. I feel like part of it is especially I don't know if this works in European politics since I brought up Sellner. I feel like it probably doesn't work identically because I feel like here at least, part of the issue is that if just taking this like Vanguard scenario, kind of working through this, part of the problem, and this, you're right. And it's so weird to like kind of articulate this because in 2016, there were people that were very, very radical. We all went through this kind of the red pill process. So it really did, that term did feel very literally applicable to how it, felt. We're like, oh my God, it's race, it's a Jewish, influence or whatever. And you go through all this stuff, but at the same time back then, people were like, yeah, so this is like, you want to almost be like the right flank of this movement. You're pushing these issues or whatever. But I feel like now in the current environment, this process I almost want to say, don't get mad at me. I'm almost like anti-red pill a little bit at this point because of the practical political fallout that seems to like now regularly result from it, where it's like, and maybe it is partly because of what you're saying, like the media element, that there's more of an incentive to take someone who's going through this process of realizing these like politically incorrect truths, and they're kind of just stumbling on one after the other. And it's this really revelatory process, maybe because of the media environment. They're being directly incentivized to take these in very, very destructive ways. But just to put it really plainly, how could you be the vanguard of people that you say are your political enemies? Like that, you know what I mean? There is no symbiotic relationship. There is no give and take, push and pull here, because at this point, I know I'm like, I'm like the GOP shill here, but it's like, yeah, it seems like a core part of this process now is to realize that like, Trump is actually a bigger enemy than like AOC or some other person like that. And if you don't say that, if you don't agree with that, you yourself are like suspicious, or you are like a subversive person, or you're compromised in some deep way. And it does get to a point, at least for me, where it becomes very kind of, it just becomes exasperating, especially after seeing this unfold for years and years. It's like, okay, guys, like, first of all, fuck you, because that's like not true. And I'm not here to like prove my bona fide. I've been around for so long, and you see these accusations fly around all the time. It's like, this is me trying to work with the political reality as it exists, acknowledging all of this progress that's been made. And I haven't seen really anybody, except, like we were just talking about Sellner or whatever, anybody take seriously what would it look like to come up with like a workable symbiotic relationship between people whose everyday job is like focusing on current practical politics, and then people, like we were saying, working on like meta-political. Because as far as I can tell now, the people that want to get involved in the latter, at least, mostly on Twitter, we're mostly talking about Twitter here, they actually, the first step they want is to enter into this kind of well-worn oppositional relationship. They like, no, these people aren't our friends. They're actually worse enemies than the left because they're, stymieing us, or they're stifling our potential in some. And that's when I want to get mean. I'm like, okay, we'll get out of your way. It's time for you to step up and win. Guy with 2,000 followers on Twitter. Let's see you come up with and it's like it's not just that I don't think it would work. It's that we've seen it before. And it's not. It's destructive. It like kind of can wreck people's lives and stuff. I know the Patriot Front guys like kind of take a lot of precautions with this. I don't really know if there's any stories of them kind of being outed and having their lives ruined.
I mean, one of the things that really gets me mad is when people were like, "Oh, you never see these guys get doxxed," and it's like, what about the time when like the police like arrested all of them and unmasked them and gave them all mugshots and doxed everybody? I mean,
oh,
like,
did that? Oh, yeah. Or
yeah, that happened. That was in Idaho. That was in Idaho years ago, and they like, and it was a total like, I mean, this is an aside, but like it was a total BS thing. It was like some, it was like a protest or a flyer or something like that. The kind of thing that leftists do all the time, and it's not even a thing. And of course, like the local PD was just thrilled to try to go after these kids and everything else.
Yeah,
which I guess brings up the bigger point, because I think you're right in the sense. What's funny is when you think of the 2016 campaign. Do you remember the old Moon Man memes and all that kind of stuff? Of course, right. And you remember, and I love giving this example. I remember my wife and I, also a product of that time, was we're listening to the this one and we were laughing about it, and it's blood curdling. I mean, it's open calls for right-wing death squads and stuff like that, and yet the takeaway of like the actual song of all this like radical stuff was like, vote Trump instead of Ted Cruz. And that was, and like, so in a weird way, like even in the most like, in the most like comical version, exaggerated version, that's like what you're talking about, where it's like, well, we're all kind of pulling in the same direction. Now, I think the issue is that, look, it's not, you can't read into Trump what you want anymore, because at this point he's been president before and he's president now. And I think the argument now regarding Trump and everything else is that you can't read into certain things. Like in 2016, you could be forgiven for thinking like, no, he's going to be the God Emperor, he's going to solve all our problems. And now the position is going to be like, look, I think most fair-minded people would say like, okay, progress has been made on immigration in some extent, maybe not enough, but like, yeah, we are clearly getting somewhere. But on all these other things, someone whose big thing, and I think they were fooling themselves, I've said this before, but if somebody voted for Trump because they thought he was going to be the opposition to the neoconservatives, they are going to say not, oh, he isn't going far enough, but he's actually gone in the wrong direction. Like he's actually taking us into something which is I specifically requested the opposite of this type deal. And so they're going to say, look, the donors, and you can, this gets dressed up. You could say like Adelson, you could say the donors on H-1B visas, although I think that's overstated too. If you look at it, Trump's actually been cracking down on legal immigration. But they're going to say, look, these people, these traditional GOP constituencies, the elites, so to speak, the donor class, they get what they want. And we do not get what we want, except, I would say, to be fair, on immigration, at least dealing with illegal immigration.
Things too. I have to, again, I respectfully though, but the DOJ has been going after all these institutions. The EEOC is going after for the same reason. It's like literally anti-white discrimination. I mean, they're just like, you can say this now. I don't know if people like care much or want to talk about it, but I feel like it's a big deal.
Do you think it's just because it's too much policies and it's harder to talk about policies rather than to say we're all going to die?
No, I agree. But you have the DOJ, the Department of Education. They're like we're just junking disparate impact as like a metric by which we evaluate. And you see these like libtard. I do. By the way, I'm not. I didn't come here to plug. I'm just here because I'm a fan. But I do
plug whatever you want. I'm going to ask you to plug at the end. So
okay, but I will shill. There's something. It's for free. Anyone can listen on the Substack. Nightowls.biz, but I do a show just without like my people, my partner or whatever. It's just me, and it's we do a show called Night Owls. So I just decided to do a news show. It's called News Owls, where I just like I collect a bunch of stuff that's going on, mostly pertaining to immigration and anti-white discrimination. And I've been doing it for like 2 months now, and it's just like when I first started it, I was like, well, yeah, just because it feels like the discourse is kind of lacking in terms of what's actually happening. And I feel like people do have this bullet point like history of the Trump admin where like
H-1Bs have gone through the roof and all this kind of stuff, and it's like not really.
Anti-Semitism. Everyone at college went to jail for being anti-Semitic, and then the Epstein files, and then we got like 10 million Chinese and Indian students, and then the Iran war happened. Like that's pretty much the bullet point Twitter version of like the second Trump admin. And I was like, no, this isn't really true, but ever since I started doing the show, I didn't realize how like untrue it is. And it's like, again, I'm not telling anyone I mean, maybe the Epstein files kind of like, I don't know, seems like big nothing burger, but like, I'm not telling people, just to make this clear, to change like their actual positions on any of these issues. I'm not telling people to become like Iran war boosters or anything like that. But I feel like, okay, but like, what is the point of the discussion if we're not like telling the truth or talking about all these actual things that have been going on. Like, you know, I'm sure you've talked about this too, but it's like, okay, the only refugees coming into America are like white
South Africans.
And this is like, again, I don't necessarily, maybe I'm being too nice to people. Because you know what, listen, whoever is complaining about how nothing's getting done, you're a new fag. But for us old heads, we used to talk about that. A lot. And now it's like the policy of the federal government. So like, it's kind of a big deal. And again, that's just one thing. Like I say, there's this war against disparate impact that's going on. I just read a story this morning again, and obviously I don't agree with the Supreme Court's ruling on birthright citizenship, but now you have like these like conservative activist organizations, these Republican kind of members showing up, these like, they're basically getting together to discuss how to like reconfigure how they vet justices, where it's like, okay, birthright citizenship now is the new Roe v. Wade. And, you know, the same way for decades, we only basically evaluated judges, which kind of now blew up in our face, based on their position on abortion or, you know, Roe v. Wade. We're going to do this now for birthright citizenship. And so I'm not saying like it's panacea or anything like that. But it's like even that becomes, I feel like it deserves to become at least part of the discussion, because what are we talking about if not like the current trajectory of the right, the current trajectory of the GOP under Trump? And it's like, well, that's definitely like a good like beginning of a line going up. Like that's like, so I'm going to take it into consideration. And so, so I talk about all that stuff. And so I'm not saying that like, the immigration issue couldn't be better. I feel like that's always theoretically true. I agree with you there. I'm just saying that like, even on other issues, anti-white discrimination and the universities and even like big corporations and stuff, there is a lot of pushback that's going on. And I just feel like it deserves to be part of the conversation when I feel like, I mean, especially online, it feels to me like it's almost totally absent.
Yeah, well, it's disconnected. I mean, like the Chinese students one, for example. I mean, Trump did say, we've all seen the clip, that like, well, we got to have all these Chinese students at the universities will go bankrupt. And it's like, I want the universities to go bankrupt. But then you look at the actual policies, and of course, he actually has cracked down on this dramatically. Now, of course, people would say we shouldn't have any. I'd agree with that. But
yeah,
it's not true. Not to truth cook, but he did not. Yeah, truth cucking, man. Yeah, fucking truth cucks are the worst.
Who's paying you to say the truth?
Zog, of course. But like, if you're increasing the number of Chinese immigrant visas or whatever it is, like that's not actually happening. It still could be better, but it does count for something. But I would say this. I mean, this is sort of like the thing that I think we're all kind of talking around. I think the whole movement is kind of talking around and everything else, is that what was the phrase they used? I think it was Anton, right? Who said in 2016, it was the Flight 93 election.
Yeah.
That we're basically we're in this desperate situation. To hell with it. We're going to put this real estate guy who everybody knew had this ridiculous past. We're just going to completely ignore, all various accusations about women and whatever else, and just go nuts. And we're going to put him in there and go for broke because the situation is screwed. And now we're here, and it's like, okay, here are these things of progress. But you have two things kind of bearing down on you. One is that, and again, it's a few months down the line, so who knows, right? But objectively speaking, things are not going well politically, mostly because of economic things and the administration. And I would say even less the administration and more like the GOP in Congress, more than anybody, is just completely feckless and has no idea what to do about economic issues. And they're literally saying we need to get like young men playing video games off welfare. Like that's their message going in.
So infuriating.
That's Mike Johnson. Yeah, I mean, that's a quote. That's Mike Johnson.
I know.
And then the other thing, and I think this is the bigger thing, is like, look, what was the big thing that we were always saying 15 years ago? Eventually, you idiots, Texas is going to go blue because of demographics. Like there is a point of no return here. Like this either gets fixed in like the next 10, 15, 20 years, or it doesn't get fixed at all.
Yeah.
And then one could argue, maybe not this year, but maybe this year, here we are. Like we are at the demographic point of no return in a lot of places. And once Texas goes blue, or once these other things start happening, at a certain point, why talk about mainstream politics at all? I mean, to return to the South Africa example, it would be like a white guy in South Africa being like, I have an idea, we'll vote our way out. And it's like, yeah, but that's not really an option anymore. So now what do we do? So you could argue that like this other stuff is nihilist. And I think there's a great case to be made for it, or even just entertainment, which I would say is even worse. But to a certain extent, there's the door for mainstream political action is closing, and some would argue that it's already been closed because we didn't do what needed to be done in the last decade.
Yeah, and I think that if there's like a realistic discussion of like a failure mode or something like that, I'm not really opposed to that. I just feel like if it's true, it's true. Like I said, I feel like my partner Moldovan, where it's like, no, it's actually over. It's actually over. We're just trying to become Brazil instead of South Africa. And I'm like, oh, that's incredibly depressing. And he's like, yeah, that's fine. No, it'll be fine. It'll be fine.
There are parts in the South that are pretty nice. I mean, a lot of Germans there.
I will say this though. I basically agree with you because I just feel like it's like what's there to disagree with? Like if the electoral, if it all cashes out electorally to your like kind of permanent doom, you're just like, well, we can't. There are no political solutions, and not in like a meme way. There just are no we're out of political solutions. We sold all. Of them,
no, there's always a political solution. There's not a system solution. Yeah. I mean, if you said something like, again, to use the South Africa example, if they had done the Volkswagen plan in the 90s, that would still be a political solution. It would just not be a system solution.
That's true.
It would not be an electoral solution.
That is fair. But I would say that like attitudinally or my disposition is like, there's a lot of unforeseen things that happened in no one really saw the way it was going to go. Like, if again, Greer's book, you mentioned his new book, White Pill, is out, and it's really good. I feel like if people want more of like the discussion we're having, they should read the book because he's not really getting into all the weeds and all this stuff the way we are. But yeah, if you want to know, like we were saying, like if you really want to know what it was like prior, like the early 2010s GOP politics, where they were just like, yeah, we just need to go on amnesty.
It was pretty grim. Yeah, it was pretty grim. But I will say that, if I was talking to some of the younger viewers, or if I was putting words in their mouths, they'd say like, okay, Grandpa, but we are where we are now. And you idiots are giving us this. Idiots are giving us. Yeah, we are old. You idiots are giving us this non-white country, and like, yeah, things are better in the sense that like a typical Heritage Foundation staffer probably listens to more based podcasts than somebody who was really into Mike Pence 15 years ago. That is something. It counts for something. How many panicked articles do you have about like, 90% of the congressional GOP staff are groypers and they're all losing their mind? But like, what does it actually mean in terms of the situation that they're coming into? The biggest black pill, I think, is that Trump is probably doing the most that can be done regarding mass deportations within the existing system, unless, of course, you did what I think he should be doing more of, but you probably can't do this without the congressional GOP, which is a non-starter. You go after the businesses. You start actually finding these people. You drain the illegal jobs magnet. Yeah. You make it impossible. You have to confront the business community. But this is sort of the thing. It's like, if you actually wanted mass deportations at the level that, to be blunt, you would need to solve the problem. And let's name a name here. Like Orrin McIntyre came in for quite a beating in that Mystery Grove article. And Orrin has made the point, and Orrin's been on the show, he's a friend. And Orrin has made the point that like, look, two things are true. This is the most we've ever seen regarding immigration in from any presidential administration in history, basically. And also it's not nearly enough to save the country. I think both those things are true. But the problem is, if you actually wanted mass deportations at the level that people demand, he'd probably have to break the law. Like he'd probably have to violate courts. He'd probably have to just not give these people hearings. He'd probably have to do lots of things. And it's a separate question if like the American people are ready for that kind of thing. And it's especially tough when people are like, why doesn't Trump vote the Rubicon? And it's like, well, if you didn't vote for him, he's not really in a position to become like dictator. I don't know what to tell you, but like, that is kind of what it's going to take. And in a weird way, this is true with immigration. This is true with the nature of the Republican coalition. More than the Antifa, the people who are responsible for the mess we're in regarding immigration is big business. Who do you need to confront? Big business. What are we going to do? We're going to give them a tax cut. How do you actually confront them? I don't know. You'd have to like change the very nature of the Republican coalition, and there's probably not enough time to do that. So this is sort of like what we're all talking around. I think that in many ways, the reason the right is fragmenting is because we all like see the problems. At least everybody in good faith sees the problems. But there doesn't seem to be a way to see a solution that doesn't involve at least a little bit of fantasy. Like if only we just declared a state of exception, if only Trump became an authoritarian, if only the system collapsed, if only the left wins and somehow they destroy the country and that provides an opening for us. It's like nobody really has like a concrete plan other than, I don't know, keep watching my podcast and somehow it'll all work out.
That's true, though. You should do that. Everyone should, who's listening, you should, definitely be doing that, though.
That goes without saying.
But I mean, well, actually, this is, and I see Yarvin kind of has been doing this on Twitter a lot too, and I feel like he, Oren is kind of downstream of him. He's very, he's kind of like now the father of the
NRX, yeah, right.
yeah. But I've actually become very disillusioned even with that, because I don't know. I just
with
feel
Yarvin, you mean?
Yeah, where just the entire neo-reactionary approach to things, it's not that I don't even agree with some of these ideas that, like, even something like the way you put it for your show, like all politics is identity politics. Like, I would never dispute that. That's like indisputably true. Of course it's true. And I don't feel like you were making it to be like, to have a neo-reactionary point, but I feel like it does dovetail a little bit, because it's the idea that, like, the democratic system, the way we kind of like decide things parliamentary, there's actually these like real motivations that undergird it, that are the
I mean, that's more of like James Burnham than anything else.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And Yarvin was, very influenced by Burnham. However, this is kind of my problem, is that over time, it increasingly looks like the big red button to magically take absolute power. And I'm like, that actually, the more real things become, the more now, and I'm going to say this because it's true, the more now you actually have people in some of the highest levels of government that basically believe what we believe, because that actually is true.
This is true.
That is true.
This
now.
is true.
They know who you are. They know who I am. They know a lot of people. I'm not even saying it for like clout or anything like that. They just know you because your face is everything.
True.
And the more real this stuff becomes, and maybe it's an old thing. Maybe it's because I'm old now. Maybe that's part of it too. But like, I actually just become more disillusioned by like and then you press the big red button to take absolute power in some sort of magical, mysterious way. Like, it's like, wait, the more real this stuff becomes, the less I have less of an appetite for something like that, because that kind of like democracy is fake. All of this stuff is artificial. And it's a mask for like real power. And once you take that real power, you can do away with all the trappings of like in our country, like democratic legitimacy. Very sexy, very sexy. But the problem is like, just like the racialist politics. It's like, damn, were we saying that because we were just like 5 losers in a room? Like a little bit, we kind of were. Like with Yarvin, when he started his mold bug, he just had his blog, big blog,
right.
Loved his blog, read his blog all the time. Unqualified reservations, just like reading everyone else. But it's just like, my point is like, it strikes me as more of a function of the same impotency that kind of motivated a lot of our LARPing. And it's like, it's not even said like I disagree with like, Machiavellian power politics or, Robert Michel's or something like the iron law of oligarchy or something. It's not even like I disagree with that stuff. It's just like, well, no, now you just got like you got guys in the Pentagon that are trying to do like what you want, and they have to work with the people at the top and the leadership. And there's like, in other words, actual power dynamics, which again, because we are just profoundly apolitical people, that's another reason why we were so in love with like, let's just take power. Power is just like the baton. You just like grab that shit and you hold on.
Yeah. So the realistic theory of politics, the elite theory of politics, is in its way anti-political, because the dream is to like get to a point where you get rid of politics. I mean, that's and also the right, in a way, the right, and I think this lends itself to the internet and streaming and cults of personality and all this kind of stuff too, is that the left always talks about equality, right? But the left is famously way more power hungry than we are, to our detriment. But we also are a lot more, we talk about hierarchy, but of course there's also this sort of liberal elites and, anti-hierarchy in practice and everything else. But in a weird way, it's that, and I think this is something unique to the right, we want sovereignty to be clear and we want power to be exercised openly. Like the idea of a king or a dictator telling me what to do is like less offensive to me than like some fat HR lady who has like even more power. Because like, at least with the former guy, it's like, well, I got to do what this guy says or he's going to bayonet me or something.
Yeah,
whereas like the latter, it's like, why do I have to live? Yeah, right. And obviously there's a lot of that going around.
It's cleaner. It's cleaner.
Right. Yeah. And I think like we want stuff to be, and I think this kind of is an underlying dynamic with everything we talk about. We want stuff to be clean. We want it to be clear. We want it to be logical. But people don't operate that way. People like believing in double standards. People like believing what they want to believe. People like believing in illusions. I mean, again, I hate to give like a relationship example, but like you see a girl at a bar, you don't just go up to her and be like, "Hey, do you want to sleep with me?" Like there's a whole situation. I mean, sometimes
you show your
do,
Twitter
but like
first. You show your Twitter
right?
account
Of course,
first. Yeah,
you
yeah.
say, "Look how many followers I have," and you go from there. I mean, that's how I got married. But
No, you're right though. It's a good point. And it's not even, it's just like these other issues. I'm not even really telling people that they should just like drop all of this stuff and like stop believing it. It's probably good on a certain level to have it like inform your worldview, right? Because yeah, like you were saying, when you interact with the HR lady, you're kind of like, you don't feel like power is so mystified. Do you know what I mean? You're like understanding,
right.
like, oh, I live in a systematically anti-white system that's trying to dispossess me, and I'm going to start building dynamite in my house. Like you kind of like feel like you understand where things are coming. So I'm not even saying it's like useless. It's only that like if this amounts to a practical political complaint, it doesn't. I just don't agree that it doesn't sound practical. I don't know how you would do it. I feel like it's like the underpants gnome. It's like the question mark. Like when do we, we say we want power, question mark, and then step 3, we have absolute power. And so it's just that I push back against that stuff when it's being used, just like the other examples I was talking about, to like trivialize the real progress that's being made now. Because it's like, yeah, like it's like, okay, I saw a lot of people, just to get to the Mystery Grove article a little bit, I saw a lot of people that were like, oh yeah, this guy's just being a Trump GOP cheerleader. He's just being a GOP shill, right? It's like, that's like obviously the accusation that flies around all the time, or something more nefarious. And like, he's telling us to like go soft on the GOP, et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, that's funny because I always laugh when people pick on him and like get really mean. I always like laugh, it's very funny. But also it's like, that's not really his point. Just to speak for him for a second, I have full authority. Just to speak for him for a second, it's like, it's not that. It's just like I said with Trump at the outset of the show, like the kind of foundational proposition I made. It's just that like, no, he's just trying to openly, explicitly acknowledge that, which was part of his criticism even of one of Orrin's tweets, where even Orrin acknowledged that like Democrats in power are not going to increase deportations. Which I get. It sounds very like, of course, but actually it's like, no, that's relevant because it means that now your fate, the stakes are tied to this gay party that we've been making fun of for like 15 years, like preying on its downfall and death. And it's not like there's this idea that you must love, this party or whatever. You must think everything's like roses. And it's like, no, that's not. This is like, it starts to get silly after a while. That's why Mystery Grove checks out. I haven't yet. But it does start to get silly after a while because it's like, yeah, like, no, I don't. And again, I'm not trying to make these land acknowledgments. Like, no, I'm not. I don't think every GOP operative is like a wonderful person who has like perfect positions or is like acting on our interest. That's like obviously not. That's not true. Right. But again, like I said before, it's like it's less true. Right. It's less true than it's like ever been in terms of like all these people just being like completely rotten politically. Right. You have it's better than it's ever been. And also Democrats are getting comfortable just like becoming the open white genocide party. And it's just like, OK, well, I don't see
that's what I think what's going to change the right. I mean, because like most political coalitions are formed in opposition. Right. And
I kind of agree with that too, by the way. Yeah.
I mean, I think if the Democrats or the party of hysterical screeching, as Peter Brimlow described it to me, but I mean, if they become the party of hysterical screeching and anti-white stuff, I mean, like it just seems inevitable that the right is eventually going to coalesce around being, if not quite pro-white, at least not yet, anti-white. And obviously there's a lot of stupid stuff in the GOP, Trump the other day, oh, brown and black voters hate socialism. It's like, yeah, it's because they already have it. But like, I mean, there's a lot of nonsense that we have to put up with, but I mean, you remember like, I think who was it? Mo Brooks from the congressman who said it's like a war against whites and like everybody lost their minds a few years ago. You had the universal condemnation of Steve King, who's also been on this show. I mean, Steve King would not have been censored now. It wouldn't have even been a scandal. Like it would have just been
fell
nothing.
out of the news cycle after like a day. Yeah, no, it's true.
I mean, it is a difference. I guess the big thing though, to take it back to the practical thing, is that one thing that we do have to deal with though is that there is a time limit to this, right? I mean, we're kind of, and this is true for the Europeans watching this too. I mean, Sellner talks about this all the time. We have 10, 15 years. Like there does come a point where system solutions, let's delicately put it, are no longer possible and things get pretty crazy pretty fast. And the argument that we had, the problem that we have now is like if we are making this moderate progress and we're slowly transforming one of the two major political parties and we're getting somewhere with this kind of stuff, is the plan. But also, if they get back in, we all know the hammer's going to fall. They're going to open the borders again. They're going to censor the internet. They're going to do all these terrible things. Everybody agrees with that. Everybody, even people who hate the Trump administration, agree with that. Is the plan then we just have to win every single election forever? Because that doesn't seem like a very realistic plan.
I know, that's so stressful. It's like, damn, now I have to like be invested in every single.
I mean, then the talking point becomes true. Every election becomes the most important election in American history.
Yeah,
which may actually be true, but like, I mean, is that even possible?
I do. Yeah, remember people used to say that. Kevin, people used to say that all the time.
And I used to roll my eyes at it. Now,
yeah, I know. I remember Hannity used to say that like 2004, like, the Bush Kerry. That's so quaint. That's so quaint. I would actually be much less angry at people for saying they're just going to vote for Democrats if like the worst you would get is like John Kerry.
John Kerry. We didn't know how good we had it. Yeah,
I would be like, oh yeah, you're a little disgruntled, but that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, we'll survive. That's fine. Maybe he'll be like accidentally racist.
I'm pretty sure John Edwards is gay, but whatever. I mean, like, God, what problems did we even have?
No, it was just I don't know. It was the like Iraq and then like evolution. What was it? Oh no, gay marriage. Gay marriage was the thing. But yeah, no, like so. I mean, it's the time limit thing is true. And the other thing I would say is that the serious version, I think, of the discussion that you're pointing to now is like systems failing or whatever. I think this is actually also relevant for the way discourse has gone for the past few years, because if something like that did happen, because I also kind of want to bring up that what you're saying, there's a validity to it, as long as someone, or maybe you, or it's just anyone really, is in a position to capitalize on that moment, which I think is like actually like essential. It's like a fundamental. It goes from being like a good situation to like the worst situation ever, depending on whether some sort of failure state hits and no one that is like on side is in a position to politically capitalize on it. And I feel like this is what, because I don't know, I didn't really ask you personally how you felt about it, but I feel like, over the past years, like the national divorce discussions and all these, that was like totally absent. It was like totally absent from that. Like if we have a civil war, it's like, well, wait, what if we brutally lose?
Well, this is the under. I mean, not to
terrible,
not to whatever. And I'm not trying to be black-pilled. I'm trying to slap people across the face and be like, understand the reality of who you're dealing with. Oh, we need a national divorce. There's going to be a civil war. You know why there's not going to be a civil war? Because the right wing won't fight. They'll have they'll have like death squads coming to their house and they'll be like, well, actually, this is the way we win by doing whatever. And God will come and save us. Like, it'll just be retarded nonsense all the way down. I mean, if you look at situations that actually happened in American history, I mean, take the Confederacy. I mean, that's the most obvious example. I mean, they didn't just like secede one day. I mean, you had power, but you had people, the fire eaters, who were a vanguard. I mean, maybe this is a way that you could actually do such a thing. They were a vanguard. They were outside the mainstream. They were hated, frankly, by most of the people in governments, but they kept hammering away at these sorts of themes. And then when the crisis came, Lincoln's election, they were able to win majorities in state legislatures. They didn't just do it. They didn't just like self-appoint themselves the governor one day. And then they were able to carry through their political movement to a successful conclusion. And the tragedy, of course, too, is that, and this is something that I think people on our side of the aisle just need to understand, is that when their moment came, when they actually had the people in their states come around to the point of view that they've been hammering away for decades, they didn't actually get power. None of these guys got to be in the Confederate government or do any of these kind of things. And they, in fact, spent the entire time doing what they did in the decades prior, which is basically being gadflies and complaining about everyone not listening to them, which is just kind of the personality type.
The first alt-right.
Yeah, right. The original, the fire eaters were the original alt-right. But there is, I mean, in a way, though, that does show the model, at least a potential model, where you do have to have somebody holding up like the ideal, like this is what we actually want. And we're probably not going to get it through the existing system because the system itself is failing. But that just holding that up as like a banner doesn't actually get you anywhere. Like somebody actually has to have control over these institutions of power. Even if you skip to the part that everybody fantasizes about, which is like the Union collapses or something, like you have some USSR style collapse. I mean, look at the USSR. The guys who were running the show afterwards were basically the same guys who were running the show before. Mm-hmm. It's just now they called themselves nationalists instead of communists. But it's like the same guy.
Yeah. That's called winning.
Yeah. Right.
The other thing, I feel like, so let me, I said I kind of wanted to balance it out. So the one thing, it's like not being able to capitalize on a moment like that is important. And the other thing, since we're talking about this still, that I want to bring up is kind of the counterbalance to this, which I think is maybe the least sexy element of this, but I think it's actually become the most salient and the most important and the most missing from kind of far right analysis that we've all adopted and internalized very deeply over years, is actually the value of legitimacy, right? Because especially from me, I'm not going to speak for you, but just, our kind of our muscle memory is, even though people would laugh at me describing myself like this now, it is revolutionary. It's fringe, it's outsider, it's, autismo. It's just like not someone who's in the mainstream and someone who's been like deeply attached to like a dream of like political radicalism and stuff like that. And so even for me, I've had a total blind spot on like the value of legitimacy. And so in other words, the opposite of this failure state, where it's like, and this kind of dovetails with the criticism I've had of neo-reaction, where it's like and it's a little bit dealing with the national divorce. In other words, the thread that connects all of these is, when do we get to start breaking rules and do whatever we want? Like, in other words, when do we get to the point where we can suspend like the normal course of history because we've reached this like such an urgent state or whatever? And my point is, even though I understand the attraction of that, I feel like, again, with the second Trump administration, in terms of teaching myself to think politically, I have now kind of awakened almost to the value of political legitimacy, where it's like, wait, well, what if you do accomplish something by the book? Should Trump ignore the courts? Right? That's like something people have been talking about for a while. Do I want him to? Yeah. Like, do I want him to like go up in a courtroom like Bane and like stand on the table with like kind of, yeah. But then it's like, wait, but what if you accomplish something with legitimacy? This is something that I feel like I never thought about before, because we haven't seen this ever in our lifetimes. I think this is like a relevant part of that. Well, what happens to the other side? Oh, they actually have to start leaning on fantasies of illegitimate retaliation.
I mean, they're kind of doing that, right? I mean,
they are.
Think of it like the DSA. I mean, they're already talking about, we're going to pack the Supreme Court, which is, brought FDR down, or at least on that level. I mean, if the FDR couldn't pull it off, I don't think the guys today are going to be able to do it. But also bringing in different states and everything else. I mean, this is, I guess this is where I'm kind of getting at. I do fundamentally think that the system will have to be broken before we can do these sorts of things. But I always think the left is going to be the one to do it. One, because they just have greater willpower and they're more willing to do these kinds of things.
And they care about politics way more. They care about politics.
Well, I mean, this is one of the black pills about democracy, right? I mean, the more neurotic and hysterical you are, the more politically effective you are. Like, I mean, even I don't like get up in the morning and like, black people. I mean, like, I go about my day and everything else. But right. But that's actually a disadvantage. Like, the people who are freaking out all the time actually run the show. But if you think of the sorts of things, and this isn't me being paranoid, these are things like the left has already promised to do. Like, when we get power, we are going to do these sorts of things. The legitimacy may be going away one way or the other, which may be the opportunity. I mean, the only, and I don't believe in accelerationism. I don't think I need to defend that. But like, the only thing that I would say that what I've defended with Trump is, I've said, like, he's not the guy, and he never was the guy, and you were naive to think that if he ever was the guy, but he was definitely a necessary step. Like, one way or the other, you had to go through this, and he was the only one who could have done it. Nobody else could have done this. Not Ted Cruz, not DeSantis, Trump is a once in a lifetime, political phenomenon.
Iconoclasm.
Right. It had to be done this way. Yeah. But the Napoleon of the current year, back when Richard Spencer still liked him. I mean, that was the phrase he used back in 2016. And he was defending it against guys like Jared Taylor and Sam Dixon, who were like, oh, he's a vulgarian and everything else. And it's like, yeah, but you kind of needed that. But now I think that the only other thing that may be what we need to go through and it may be coming one way or the other, regardless of what we think about it, whether it's a good idea or a bad idea, just looking at the reality of the political situation, is the left may have to break the system because that will be the kick in the butt conservatives need to say, okay, the system just isn't working anymore. We still believe in the Constitution. We still believe in the Republic. We still believe in all these things, but they don't anymore. So what are we doing? And in a way, that's how we got Trump. I mean, what was the thing that had to happen before you get Trump? When you had Mitt Romney, who was like the most polite, nice, mild guy ever, and he's being accused of killing dogs and wanting to kill grandma and also putting blacks back in chains. You remember that? And giving people cancer. Yeah, that was Biden. Yeah, right. And giving people cancer on purpose and all this kind of stuff. And that had to happen because then when Trump ran and they were like, yeah, this guy's a Nazi, everyone was like, yeah, you said that about Romney. We don't care.
Yeah. Also, another point that's very, very important that always gets left out in the discussion, that since you're kind of building this case, is that BLM existed before Trump. I feel like there's been this like revision that goes on where, especially with self-serving liberals, where they try to like imitate soul searching, because we know they're kind of incapable of doing it, because they'd have to become right wing if they really soul searched. We kind of just know how it would look if they actually like, fuck, everything I've ever believed is wrong. But one of the parts of this is that like Trump has caused all of this. If only we could get rid of this guy, everything would go back to normal. It's like,
yeah, there were bigger things going on. I mean, Trayvon Martin,
everyone trans and making everyone worship black people before Trump actually. Like, it's a really important. You almost can feel sometimes in their analysis how desperate they are for that not to be true. Like they wanted BLM to be a post 2016 creation, or like transgender is like, no, you're right. Trayvon Martin.
It was in Obama's second term creation, fundamentally. I mean, Saylor went all in on this, and he was saying like, look, Obama ran as the candidate of unity. There is no red America. There is no blue America. We're all one America. And then second term, it was like mask off. We're doing race stuff all the time. This is what it's going to be. I mean, you want to talk, if people talk about how'd you get Trump, I mean, you got to talk about Obama's second term. And the idea that if they go back to that some level, which is probably what you're going to get a way more race-centered Democratic Party, even more than Obama's second term. I mean, to kind of wrap up where all this is going, I think there's a sort of, we don't know what the future holds, and there's a lot of different ways this can go down. But I think that to defend the vanguardists for a moment, I think that at some level, even people who are saying, look, we got to work through the system and everything else, it is probably unrealistic to think that we are going to win every single election forever. And so therefore we can roll back a lot of the bad things that have been happening gradually over the course of 20 years. Like at some point, the left's going to win, maybe sooner rather than later, and we're going to have to deal with something. But the flip side of that, too, is that when the left does that and they really crack down and they do a lot of the things that they've been openly threatening to do, that is going to take away a lot of the remaining legitimacy of the system. I think where the harder right, if we want to call it that, makes a mistake is they think that people are just going to automatically react. Like now they will see. Yeah. The fact is, people are just as likely to react with defeatism and a sense of impotence as they are to get angry and do something. I mean, for people to get angry and do something, they have to have some idea of what is it that we're trying to do? What is the realistic path to victory? It doesn't necessarily just need to be voting. If you've got something else in mind, fine. But like there has to actually be something. And I think what everybody's kind of forgetting is that that's going to take organization. It's going to take real world networks, and it's going to take a plan. Not just endlessly complaining about how actually there's nothing we can do. So, buy my stuff.
Yeah. And I do agree with that. And let me just, since we're ending, let me actually say the meanest version of this that I could possibly, because I do agree with you. And I feel like
it's actually my fault that everything's gone wrong.
One of your, well, no, because I feel like there's something that you kind of been pointing out a little bit. There's especially when we were talking about South Africa too, there's kind of an element here that I actually find really interesting that I never really thought about before. But I feel like you kind of are implicitly hammering home on this, that like there actually is also no scenario where people that style themselves like, the vanguard or anti-system, or, in other words, there's no solutions within the system. There's actually no scenario where they are somehow absolved of responsibility by making this. And it almost gets worse. Like I almost feel like I'm letting people off the hook because I'm like, actually really good things are happening in the current like political presidential administration. And you just keep podcasting and complaining about how like nothing's going right. But actually like on the opposite analysis, it's like, you're podcasting? Like you need to be organizing like militias that are ready to take over like governments when they vote blue, and then they like.
I mean, I don't just podcast. I mean, I can't tell you everything that I do.
No, I don't mean you personally. But like, you see what I'm saying? Like, there's almost like there's this implicit kind of there's this undercurrent to that conversation. Where it's like Trump has failed us, Trump has betrayed us. It's like, well, actually, that puts more onus on you. And I'm not even saying that I have no onus. Yeah. I'm not like, no, I'm just like sitting poolside because patriots are in control a little bit. But like, we all still have responsibilities, to like advocate for things. And if we get opportunities to like work for real material change at the political level, economic level, but it's like almost like on the doomer scenario, like, no, like you have to do
more stuff.
Yeah. Like
that was what I said. That was what I said the other day. Like, it's easier to get elected to a board of education seat. And if you can't do that, you're not going to overthrow the government.
Yeah. And so the meanest version of what I'm going to say is predicated on this just simple observation, because I want to justify myself before I say something mean, is that none of that has really happened at a meaningful level. There is no far right, independent from Trump, meaningful organizing that's going on in America. And again, like good or bad, I'm just kind of accepting that as a fact. So the mean version of what I'm going to say is that, and this is kind of bad, the left actually, I don't think they really have to worry about the far right without Trump. Just like when I said at the outset, is that our fate is tied to Trump. From what I see on Twitter, the way people kind of go down this rabbit hole now, the way they kind of look at it's a very self-indulgent, and I get it, but I was like that too once. You were too. We were all kind of undergoing this process where we kind of felt like we were unlearning all of these really naive beliefs about the world, But I actually almost want to go so far as to say is that because things have gotten so real, and because a lot of this is now actually materializing in the real world, I'm almost like against this process because it's almost resulting in more counterproductive behavior.
Like it's become an info hazard.
You kind of just had to be there. And I talk to young guys even online that are way younger than me, and I almost want to be like, there was a point where there were like high quality, really intelligent, people that were writers and they were activists, and they underwent this process. And it was just like, oh my God, like everything I have been taught about the world is like a lie.
Right.
And a few of them went crazy, right? But they were like kind of funny. Like they were at least funny. It's like, I know this crazy guy.
I like to think I've been having a continuous mental breakdown for about 15 years.
But I'm sure you have some great theories. I'm sure you would make great kind of bar conversation.
That's the fun part of like schizophrenia is you have all sorts of great theories.
And, but yeah, so there's a little bit of a self-indulgence to this. And on top of that, on top of the other thing that you kind of brought up a little bit, well, I'm not going to be too cynical about it, but the fact that people kind of feel like there's more media opportunities in this sphere than actual real world political achievement. Right. I think that in a fight between like the far right and the far left, we would get those trannies would stomp us into the dust. Like we have no shot. And it's almost that's what I mean when I say it's like mean, like my max kind of we are all delusional statement is like,
no. And I say this as I say this as somebody who wants an independent right of Trump, but it has to be built. And I think a lot of people, I get really frustrated when people are like, oh, if there's a civil war, like we're going to gun them all down. It's like, we would get annihilated.
My ass is dying.
These people have networks that you would not believe. And I've been dealing with these people for 15 years and
it's almost more blackpilling.
Right.
The
because like you have to, and it's not that victory is like impossible. It's not that we can't do these things. It's that but you do have to do them. The only thing I would say is that there's definitely been more people doing these things in a serious way than has also ever existed before. That the situation on that front is actually better than it's ever been before. You compare what was going on in 2016, 2017 with what we might call the parallel structures, people starting different groups and things like that. I mean, it was definitely amateur hour. You look at the groups who are out there organizing today, it is on a different level. It's on a much different level.
I'm sure
it's a lot more.
Learned a lot.
People have, and because they've all been through it, including me. But like that said, I mean, we are 20 years behind Antifa, and like we have to get there.
I want to say one last thing too, because I feel like this is I kind of am familiar with this lens through which we view things, and I'm sure you're familiar with it too. But especially like when we apply it to the DSA, I want to almost give like a little bit of a counterintuitive take. I feel like relating to like Vanguard and mainstream politics. I feel like the way I'm not trying to like caricature a position here, but it's just like you see, okay, look, the Democrats are now giving way to their radical left flank, and they're achieving success and they're winning elections. And this is like, whoa, That's good. Basically, it's like great. And it's just left wing. That's the only bad part about it. Like what we would want theoretically is to somehow replicate this, but for the right. I kind of now, in learning to blue pill myself and become a GOP shill cuck, I'm kind of like almost becoming skeptical of this. Don't call me retarded just yet. Don't call me retarded just yet. But I am becoming a little bit skeptical of this. I think this actually might be a disaster. And I've said this before on our show, that I feel like, especially on Twitter, because the temperature is always so high and a lot of left-wing people have left, for blue sky or whatever, and liberals kind of check out because they hate Elon. There is like, it feels like right-wing people are kind of locked in a big sinking Titanic ship with each other, just like we don't have any libtards to attack as much as we used to. Yeah. And I feel like we become blinded to this. But I was going to say, the big picture, I think that the Democrats have been going through, and maybe they'll reverse this with the midterms. I don't know. Even if they win, though, I'm not sure this isn't true, that since at least 2019, they have been going through a slow collapse, like having to throw Biden out there to like stymie the process. Because I'm sure you remember how woke-tarded the 2019 primary was. It was just like so absurd. And obviously the apparatchiks were like, oh my God, this is a disaster. Let's pick this 90-year-old retard because like he's a party, like Biden will like,
he'll win the white working class. He'll win enough of the white working class.
Black people know his name. Exactly. Right. Like black people know his name, so he might win. And that's, but then Kamala and then the current state of the party. And it's almost like a Russian Revolution type thing, like where not to mystery grove out again, but it's like the DSA is only gaining because of the internal collapse of their party structure. And so I almost want to say that there's a chance, because I don't know for sure, I'm not making hard predictions, but I think that you should keep this in mind, that there's a potential that this kind of like insurgent left-wing kind of victory is actually a mirage. And this is actually compounding the collapse of the party and the disaster that they're in, that it's actually not good for them, that they are unable to withstand. We want to call it, because we're kind of used to wanting to emulate this model, like their left-wing radical flank, but they're actually all retarded. They're dumb as shit. They don't know anything. And, they obviously know a few things, like they're all like hardcore Palestinian activists now. And that has been like a huge sea change on the left. That's almost like kind of like solely responsible for their
probably killed Josh Shapiro's chances.
Yeah. And they've been winning these elections. But the thing I'm a little bit skeptical if this is going to serve as like a new model for Democrat victory going forward as like a standard. That could be the case, but I'm actually not sure about that. And I'm becoming increasingly skeptical of it. And therefore, this is why I brought it up. And therefore, I'm actually more reticent to rush to replicate that model for the right, because as you can see, our own version of that has been like kind of a disaster, like in Ohio with that one guy, Casey Putsch, didn't really work out for him. And although I will say one caveat, that the guy in Florida Fishback is hilarious, and I think he is kind of a con man, but he's very funny. He's very funny. I will give him that. But I feel like our version of this does not seem to even be working at a superficial level. And so even if there were a model of this that would work for us, it's not the one that you're seeing now. And I'm actually not sure if that is even working for the left. And again, because I feel like this is, again, for me, it goes back to the legitimacy issue. It's the collapse of legitimacy. Like, well, what if they're just relegated to these blue cities as like anti-ICE protesters, and they keep losing these court battles, and they have to start talking about civil war, and they have to start talking
that's actually what you want. I mean, to conclude real quick, I mean, that what I've always said, and this is just, I mean, one thing when you look at left-wing strategies, the right and the left are not the same thing. Like I used to give talks on like Saul Alinsky and stuff, but one of the things is like, you can't just duplicate his tactics. I mean, they just don't work the same way for both sides. They just don't. But the one thing that is just inherent to the right is that the right's generally not going to rebel against the system. So what you almost want is you want to be in charge of the system, and then the left goes nuts trying to do something extra constitutional and start the revolt against you. And then you get to drop the hammer, which is ideally what you would want. I mean, and you could argue maybe there were opportunities to do that, but I mean, if on a long enough timeline, maybe that's how it plays out. If we win, maybe that's how we win.
Doesn't it hurt to feel like you realize that your constituency is not like the revolutionary? Like,
yeah, I mean that comes with being on the right. And I'll say this
they
just
Trump
to wrap up.
I'll say that, yeah. But,
I mean, in terms of like what I believe, obviously it's burn it all down and nuke the world. But like in terms of like the people I like, and I guess this is a big difference, is like I like normie conservatives. I like these kinds of people. I like the kinds of communities they build and everything else, even though on first principles, I'm probably totally different from all of them. But I just think they're poorly led and they're betrayed constantly.
I feel the same way. Yeah.
But the question is, can you get people who are normies to act like revolutionaries? Maybe the answer is no.
Yeah.
But in some sense, that's like what I've been trying to do my whole life. And maybe that's like really what it's all about.
I'll end with my final message is we need the rule followers so that one day when we issue the rule to eat your libtard neighbors, break in your house and eat your libtard neighbors, they're just like, well, the system, I'm a system guy. I've always been
Look,
a system guy.
it's in the Constitution. I mean, this is just how it has to go. That's a good place to end it. Where can people find you and how can they support you?
We are at nightowls.biz. We are on Substack. We do a podcast called Night Owls. They're actually Twitter Spaces. We are the last Twitter space. They've done nothing to support the functionality whatsoever, but we started it like when they started Spaces. Moldovan was just like, I'm in a subway waiting for a train. Let's do a space. And I was like, okay. And then people got mad at us and they're like, I missed it. You got to record these. And I'm like, record our this is like the worst conversations like ever imaginable. So we started recording them. And I do some solo content too. And so you can check it out. It's a podcast called Night Owls. So it's nightowls.biz. We did .biz for the throwback. We had a little nod to
you got it. Yeah, right.
Nod to the old
so gotta give a salute to the OGs. We would not be here if it weren't for them.
So that's where we're posted up. Yeah.
All right, man. Envy, thank you so much for joining us. This was a lot of fun.
Really
do it again.
Yeah. Thank you, Kev.
So there is a situation in the United Kingdom right now surrounding the Reform and Restore parties. It's very unfortunate that they begin with the same letter. It's kind of a branding fiasco, but leave that aside. There's been some talk of, if not quite an alliance, an electoral pact. Basically, they won't run against each other in certain areas. And there are a number of conditions to this. One of the most important is that Nigel Farage, leader of Reform, has to not let certain Tories into his government if he ever gets the chance. And a counter argument from Farage is that Restore UK needs to purge certain people, among them Charlie Downes, who's the campaign's director and spokesperson. Now, Downes has been a nationalist activist for a very long time, one of the leading champions of re-immigration. He's gotten himself in trouble because he said some social media stuff where they say, well, he's accusing Farage of being owned by Jewish interests and all this kind of stuff. I think it's a little exaggerated, the charges that are being made against him. But one can't help but notice that the very same people, or at least a lot of them, who are saying, oh, isn't it horrible that Charlie Downes is an ethno-nationalist? Isn't it horrible that he's saying that Britain's indigenous population has to remain a majority in its own homeland? Kind of funny how all the people who are freaking out about this on the so-called right tend to all fanatically support Israel. And of course, Israel's self-conception of itself as a Jewish state, which is to say as an ethno-nationalist state. Nationalism for me, no nationalism for thee. Again, everybody is a blood and soil nationalist for the people that they actually like. Now, here's the real question, and I'm not trying to be unrealistic here. I mean, left and right are real things. And I think it's a little dangerous to be like, well, you set out like the perfect ideological position and then you just get to win. Like, no, you have to defeat the left too. And we can't just be at war with each other forever. I'm not completely politically unrealistic. I have no interest in winning the argument, so to speak. I'm not interested in being in the gulag with you guys and being like, well, I was right about this point of ideology. I'm interested in winning. I'm interested in being in power. I'm not interested in getting the paying taxes to my enemies in power award. To me, that's a much worse award than fell for it again award. But there are certain things that we have to establish. And one of the most important, and this is not just a question of morality, it's a question of tactics. You cannot let people dictate who you can and cannot hang out with, who can work for you, who gets to have veto power over your personnel. Charlie Downes has been doing this for a very long time. He is putting out there a common sense message of nationalism and ethnic identity for the British people. And if the British people cannot be a majority in their ancestral homeland, if that is beyond the scope of things, if that is outside the Overton window, to some extent, what are we doing? What is the point of any of this? I mean, yeah, we can talk about system solutions and we can talk about being realistic, but that is the bare minimum condition. That is not a radical demand. That is as close to an elementary right as exists. And so if that is too much for reform, then why bother? What common interest even exists? And more to the point, if Charlie Downs is gone, it's not going to stop there. Oh, Hope Not Hate found that this guy went to a meeting that he shouldn't have gone to. Oh, he said something in a Telegram message 5 years ago. You need to fire him too. Oh, this candidate who just won a seat, well, he cited a book that we don't like. You need to get rid of him. This isn't me coming up with hypotheticals. These are things that Farage has done in the past. Where Hope Not Hate, this anti-fascist group says, we don't like this guy. And Nigel Farage goes, yes, sir. And then he purges his own guys at the behest of a far-left group. The point is not to be an acceptable opposition to the left. The point is to overcome the left. The point is to defeat the left. The point is to save our countries. No compromise on this. If Restore needs to go it alone in order to keep Charlie Downs, then that's what they need to do. Because if you surrender on this issue, you're going to surrender on everything else really soon. I'm Kevin DeAnna. We'll talk again real soon. All right, guys, that's it for today's episode of Identity Politics. If you found this valuable and you want to see more of this kind of work, here's how you can help. First, follow the show and share it with people who need to hear it. We're on Rumble, Odyssey, YouTube, X, TikTok, and you can also grab the RSS feed. Sharing it is the fastest way for us to grow. Second, sign up for our email list so we can always stay in direct contact no matter what the platforms decide. And most importantly, if you believe in our mission and want to keep it going, please consider supporting us on Ko-Fi. You can donate once or subscribe at the bronze, silver, gold, or white level. Every contribution, big or small, helps keep Identity Politics independent and alive. All the links are in the description below. Thanks for watching. Thanks for supporting. We'll see you next time.